I've tried shopping around for a 3D commission, and I don't know, I found the price structure so off-putting, and I kind of
Yeah.
arrived to a moment that, you know what, I would rather just learn to do this myself. I may not be
Hmm.
creatively inclined, but I am extremely bitter, and I don't think your time is worth that much if I'm being completely transparent.
Yeah, honestly speaking, I go for pretty cheap commissions on everything. Like
Hmm.
my whole live 2D design all the way to rigging was $170.
Nice. You're an order of magnitude ahead of most people who commission any kind of assets.
Man, I know. I keep telling them, I'm like, guys, listen, I found my guy on Etsy and they did a great job
Yeah.
for the amount of money and stuff. But they don't want to hear it.
I mean, everyone wants to go to Twitter. They want to have a famous VTuber parent, and I kind of understand that.
Oh yeah.
I would love the extra exposure from, for example, being featured in Sigmund's arts. But
Hmm.
first of all, I kind of like owning the Kurumaru character. I like owning my own visuals because, this is
Yeah.
self-expression for me. It's not that someone made this character for me. It's something that I've made from scratch with my own inputs and my ideas.
Totally, totally. And I think like on my end, like you better believe that I went to Twitter first and looked at, all of the Hollow Star artists who did all the guys and stuff like that. But the problem with it is whenever I'd go to Twitter, it wasn't even a money thing, but what just everyone was closed. Everyone was waitlisted. Everyone was just wicked closed, not accepting commissions. And so I couldn't even begin to want to commission them. So I was like, no, I kind of need this done now.
There's also another problem. A lot of artists can't do muscular characters.
I know, man, it's rough out here.
Yeah, you'd think that, if someone claims to be an artist, they could into anatomy at least a little bit.
There's a lot of people that just don't do male. This is good podcast stuff. Should we start or have we started?
I mean, we've technically started. I don't know. Do you want a formal intro? I felt like we were just gonna roll with it.
I mean, yeah, maybe if we just have like a quick introduction and then we can patch that in towards the
Ah,
beginning or something.
listen, we could start now and then just, rabbit hole back into it. Even if we lose a little bit of
Yeah, yeah.
yapping, it's not really an issue. But Alpin, hey, thank you for dropping by. Thank you for making time.
Hey, no problem, man.
Happy to have you. Yeah, we kind of blew a bit of our load before the actual recording started. But yeah, a lot of the artists that sort of exist in the VTuber space, they either don't do male models full stop, or they just don't do muscular models.
Yeah, it's honestly like really surprising how many people out there you'll see that just will not take male commissions. And what we're talking about kind of is just like, yeah, it's really hard as like a more muscular dude to find someone who can do your stuff. I've been told actually that the only way to find people is to look at like BL artists, right? You have to look at like BL artists or bar artists, and that's it.
Mm, that checks out. I think it has to do more with workflows. Like a lot of people don't really create most assets from scratch. Like they go through their existing workflows. Like for example, if it's a 3D artist, they probably have a pre-existing rig where they've already pre-made all of the physics and they just need to shift around some of the meshes and work on the texturing as opposed to doing it every time from scratch.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, finding an artist at the beginning was definitely one of the hardest parts because I think a big problem is I get very attached, you know what I mean? Like I'm very attached. Me here, Alpin, in real life,
Hmm.
Alpin and through the screen, right? I'm very attached. And I worked on this. I actually was part of this design process where my artist designed it, but I had another friend and I sit down and redesign it and then send it back saying basically, hey, no, this is what we want. So I have a very big hand in the design process here, but it's tough because, I was looking into maybe starting with a pre-made 2D or a pre-made PNG, one of the cheap ones on Booth or something like that, but there were absolutely no muscular males.
Yeah.
And so I couldn't find something that I felt comfortable behind, you know?
Well, it has to do with a lot of the booth stuff being based on Vroid, and Vroids started with being by default a female model. Even if you
Hmm.
dissect the rigging, all Vroid models have a breast physics bone in their armature.
Yeah, yeah. even when I was looking on like Etsy and stuff like that, right? I'd look through Etsy, I'd look through Fiverr just for pre-made VTuber models, and I just kept finding like there was so many like, oh, it's Fox Boy, oh, it's Dog Boy, oh, it's Cat Boy, or it was Korean manhwa like Pretty Boy, and there were just absolutely zero pre-made muscular dudes, and it was like, man, this I have to make something. I have no choice.
Listen, yeah, unfortunately, the structure of the VTubing market is such is that a lot of the technical side of it is handled by furries, and furries are the ones who are fixing a lot of the usability and just quality of life issues for anything that has to do with 3D tracking or software availability and whatnot. And anyone who's on the spending end to actually want to pony up, well, most people who will pony up that kind of money for having a model designed, they're usually going to fall somewhere into the space of consuming the Fujo bait models.
Totally. I mean, even beyond that too, like the, Fox Boy, Cat Girl, that's so ubiquitous and it's so common that it's kind of what is out there. And yeah, it's trying to go for something a little, I don't even feel like it's non-traditional, right? There's plenty of masculine, muscular dudes out there, but it's model-wise just very, very limited. So you kind of have to commission, and then even finding the commission for someone to do it well was very hard too. So it's a little tough.
I would say within the VTubing space, it's a non-traditional approach to a model because everyone wants to be sort of a twinky little femboy for most cases, or at the very least, they want to have the standard McDefault physiognomy. It never occurs to anyone that no, I want a fucking 8-pack.
Yeah, yeah. And that's the thing too, is like I think part of it was when I was thinking about my design and thinking about myself, I was like, you know what I'm trying to evoke? I'm trying to evoke like, listen, I'm a weeb. I fully admit that. But there's a whole section of that is, Dragon Ball Z, Baki, Hajime no Ippo, stuff like that, which is like, yeah, very muscular characters that are very traditionally anime. And I'm like, yeah, that's where I want to be, right? That's what I am. That's what I identify with. So
Yeah, exactly.
it's just surprising.
Exactly, exactly. I mean, listen, it was anime that gifted us the truism that if one is born a male, he will, for once in his life, dream of being the strongest man alive.
Yes, of
That's
course, of
it's
course.
it's anime. A certain segment, specifically shonen, is very muscle pilled, for lack of a better term. It's very much in
Yeah.
the ethos of the storytelling of a big part of weebery. It's just that it's, I would say, niche compared to, for lack of a better term, slop tier anime, which is your typical product of consumption by the mainline modern weeaboo.
Yeah, I've always felt like being an anime fan is a bit of a cycle. So, my background here, saying this as someone who's been watching, obviously since I was a very young kid, but I didn't know then, but watching like seriously since like 2006, we'll say. I've seen about 250 anime series, and you get to a point with anime where your entry point as like a guy traditionally, right? There are many exceptions to this, but as a guy traditionally, your entry point is often shonen, something like Dragon Ball Z, Naruto, One Piece, the big three back in the day. But then you kind of grow out of it and you look back on it with disdain. But then you come all the way back around to enjoying like every anime again. I feel like once you're like a more advanced fan, it's almost like the curve of talking a lot about something when you know a little bit about it, but then at the end result, you have the same opinions towards the beginning, I guess is how to describe it.
Yeah, it's like the bell curve of opinions.
Right,
My
right.
point of entry was kind of different. I
Mhm.
watched Sailor Moon without really understanding what anime is. It was just a morning cartoon for me. And then I watched a lot of Pokemon, and it also it didn't register with me that this is the thing called anime.
Yeah, same, same.
And then way later, I've only encountered anime through the prism of the Western anime fandom, and my reaction was, brother, ugh. Like I want to be nowhere near these fucking people. While at the same time binge watching the melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya, just not connecting the two at all.
Right, right. I feel like personally I took to it pretty fast, where I was in a similar place where I started with Pokemon. I actually started reading the Dragon Ball manga when I was 5,
Mm.
and stuff like Ranma one half or Ranma half. And yeah, I just moved on from there. Didn't really think of it as anime. And then around 2006, That period of time for me was like around middle school for me, and that was kind of like the prime like glomp era, I guess I would say. You know, Jack Skellington glomp era, Nightmare Before Christmas stuff, right?
Hmm.
So hanging out with all like the goth kids and watching anime, watching Code Geass and stuff. That's when I recognized really what anime was, and then from that point on, I became like a big fan and started watching like seasonally a little later on, and followed it ever since basically. But I was a quick take to like that point of culture. Like I remember, you know, yaoi paddles and stuff, and it's like that was weird and that was kind of messed up, but it's also kind of nostalgic.
I mean, yeah, it's a component of culture. So because I was very much isolated from the American media space for a variety of reasons, like my take up was very different. At the time when I was watching Suzumiya, I understood that okay, this is obviously anime, and I'm exploring it as a format. But even then, I was watching dubs, which is basically not really watching anime at all. Um, and I only became a mainline weeaboo at the point where I picked up knockdown karate and I was sort of exposed to Japanese culture in a wider sense. And, you know, okay, it looks like this fucking Japan thing is kind of cool. And
Yeah, just a bit, just a
yeah, yeah,
bit.
yeah. And then the backdraft of anime being a source of spoken Japanese locked itself in completely. And then it all came together.
Yeah. I have to credit my God, I don't even know how to describe this, but I have to credit a friend of mine who was maybe 2 grades, 2 years above me, who I lived right down the street from, and his whole family were anime fans, like way back then, right? So they're both of their parents were watching anime in like the 70s and 80s, and they indoctrinated their kids into it. So this was the
The
friend who I'd go over.
the antediluvian weebs.
Yeah, yeah. I'd go over his house, right, and they'd all be watching like Inuyasha, and he grew out his nails to be more like Inuyasha, you know, that sort of thing.
Nice.
And he would lend me Ranma and Dragon Ball, and he kind of initiated me into the like, this is Japanese, you know, like they would eat with chopsticks sometimes. We're talking that full on, right? They were not Japanese.
I'm pretty sure I use chopsticks in my household more frequently than European tableware.
Yeah, same.
I am far gone. I eat
Yeah, we're beyond.
we're beyond saving, yeah. Uh, I mean, realistically, I've had this habit of just latching on to an Asian diaspora wherever I live. For example, I lived in London for a period of time, and instead of inculcating myself in, for example, local culinary habits, I've completely latched on to the Japanese diaspora and just lived off of their infrastructure.
There you go. That's the way to do it, man. I'm feeling that more and more every day. Let me tell you, my every time I go to Japan, I think about it more whenever I leave. It's like calling to me, man.
There are a lot of everyday life lessons just in terms of, you know, the logistics of everyday life, certain habits and certain best practices that I think are worth lifting from Japan, if not wholesale, then in principle at the very least.
Totally, totally. I mean, my experience so far has been like, you know, I've talked about this before, but for those who don't know, I've traveled to every prefecture of Japan. So
Mm.
I've been to every single area of Japan, spent at least one night in every area. And then some places like Kansai, I've been there for like a month or two, right?
Mm.
And yeah, just when I'm in Japan in general, I feel more at ease because I think just naturally, it really jives with me. The walking culture over the car culture, the politeness in the streets over, you know, and consideration and being aware of yourself and stuff like that, kind of jived with me a lot more than I would have expected, I guess I would say.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it does. It does seem that way. I think a lot of that is a byproduct of them just generally being a high trust society, and it's also
Yeah.
combined with just the availability of certain things. Like a car is seen as a luxury there, just because the logistics of owning a car are kind of expensive because
Yeah.
space is expensive, therefore parking spaces are also expensive, and by proxy, if you want to use a car, you need to sort of pay that premium for using that extra space that a car would take up.
Right, right. Even though the cars themselves are like a third of the cost of here.
Mm. I really like the Japan exclusive models of like Toyota or something like that. The little boxy looking thing on wheels that just
Ah,
fits into little
the K
corners.
cars.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah. Like the one that fits
Love them.
yeah, the one that fits exactly like four adult bodies into the trunk of it and just fits into every corner and always fits into a parking spot. Just fantastic.
Yeah, just a little box. You know, I have a big appreciation for minimalism in general, so that extends to vehicles too. The smaller my car or the smaller my mode of transport, I'm happy. That makes me smile.
Yeah, like it's a suitcase on wheels. It's there to let you move things faster and more efficiently, and that's it.
Yeah, yeah. Point A to point B. Who needs more than that? I mean,
Yeah,
some people like more than that if it's their hobby, but for me, it's like I don't care what my car looks like as
yeah.
long as it gets somewhere.
Hopefully by the end of summer, I'll procure a driving license, and I will likely just have a pickup truck for two reasons. Just because they're a little bit more appropriate for the Texas terrain,
Yeah,
and again, it's useful for carrying shit. Because the only real reason I need a car, like the only real comfort that I would derive from having a car, is that I would be able to go to shooting competitions that are further out or go grocery shopping somewhat more efficiently than I currently am. And for both of those, I kind of need the storage space.
yeah, totally. I actually assumed that you already had a pickup truck being from Texas.
I don't even have a driver's license.
Now I gotcha.
I can't drive at all. Like I know the basics of operating I know the basics of driving stick that have been
Hmm.
taught to me like around the age of 10, but I've
Yeah.
never had a use case to need a car or just procure one, and then every time I start thinking about the overhead of owning it, I'm just I'd rather just buy supplements.
Yep. Hey man, I get you. Like I actually moved away from cars. I just because of my circumstances, I had to have a car immediately when I
Mm,
was a kid. So like 15 and 9 months, I got my permit. 16, I had a car.
mm,
And I actually started on a 1968 vehicle. So it
mm,
was an automatic, but it was from the 60s.
mm-hmm.
And it was just a big steel death trap. It was awesome. But I learned on that, and then I did learn stick. I had a couple of stick cars. I've been through about 7 cars because my dad actually buys broken cars, not as his job, but as a hobby.
Ah,
He'll buy and fix broken vehicles. So he'll just give me, or, like buy something really cheap and we'll work on it, fix it up. And then, of course, 2 years later, it will explode.
mm,
So that's why I've been through 7. But I've always had
yeah.
one up until very recently. When I went to Japan for the first time, for a long period of time, I was like, you know what? I'm already not using it much because everything I need is very close by. And I wasn't really using it for anything. And I didn't want it to just sit there while I paid insurance while I was gone. So I was like, I don't need a car. I'm getting rid of this. Like you said, the overhead. I didn't
Yeah.
need it.
Yeah, for me, it's like a combination of, okay, so I need to store it somewhere. Means I need to pay for a covered parking space because hail in Texas is like the size of a very large bead. So,
Yep.
yeah, like any kind of paint job you have on it, even if it's rudimentary, it's going to be damaged by that. And then on top of that, you still get car break-ins and things of that nature, so it's better to keep it in some sort of observed area or in your own
Yeah.
garage, which is, the cost of the garage, and then also the insurance. Me being a brand new driver, the insurance premiums are going to be ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. Let me tell you, they give you no quarter, man. I mean, I took a 1 year break from owning a car and my insurance went crazy.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, I had a perfect record for like 10 years. What do you mean?
I wonder if you could just have a car but not have insurance on it so you don't use it. It's just marinated in your garage and you wait it out to get more reasonable insurance premiums.
Yeah, what I'm doing right now is my friend and I both work from home,
Hmm.
and we both have like because I have my gym is attached to my house.
Yeah.
Basically, I have a studio, and so we just share a car.
Hmm.
So I'm on his insurance, he owns the vehicle, and we just share it basically.
Nice, nice. Yeah, that's one way to do it.
Yeah, it's good for like when neither of you have to use it very much.
Yeah, yeah, that way there's never a conflict in using it. Honestly, I've managed to land myself in a place that is very uncharacteristic for Texas, where I also don't really need a car.
Yeah, that's impressive.
If I need to go anywhere badly, there's Uber, and okay, I'll pay $10 one way. Fine. It's not that I go outside that often anyway.
Hmm.
And that's pretty much it. I have a grocery store within walking distance that I can walk to and use that as my rucking workout.
Yep, it's a great way to get that steps in, and well, not steps for you, I know.
It's a well, listen, I recognize the value of non-exercise physical activity, and a light ruck with an element of farmer's walk is definitely not
Sure.
harmful.
Yeah, yeah.
I actually use a backpack for my shopping. I have a a backpack covered in like molly and patches and shit, and it's a reasonably spacious backpack, and I have my utility gloves, so that way I load up the backpack with whatever fits inside, and everything else is my farmer's walk weight.
There you go. Yeah, I have like a an orange ripstop bag that I like that's foldable that I can put in a bigger bag. I usually use it for like day trips when I'm traveling, because I when I travel I do like one backpack. I don't bring a
Mm.
suitcase or anything like that. So it's like my deployable, right?
Mm.
And I'll usually just bring that to the grocery store and fill that up. I have other modes of transportation though, so like I can walk to my grocery stores. It's not bad. It's like 35 minutes. But I have an e-scooter that I like using too.
Ah.
So I have a fun scooter that I'll take sometimes.
Yeah, that works. That works. I have a longboard that's just been sitting there for 3 years ever since I moved, just because I don't go distances that would, require me to change it up for my longboard because it would be more efficient. Everything
Mhm.
is close enough that I could just walk, really.
Yeah.
So now it just sits there, unfortunately. I used to use it for grocery hauls back before I moved to Texas. So I learned balancing myself and making pretty sharp turns on the longboard while having groceries in both of my hands.
Man, that reminds me of the most dangerous thing I did when I was in Japan, where one time I was in Totori
Hmm.
and I was trying to go to the sand dunes, right?
Okay.
And so I get there with barely enough time to do it. I get on the bus, and apparently in Totori they didn't take the pass. So the Passmo I had didn't work, so they couldn't charge just based off the pass. So I was like, okay, I'll use yen. Well, they also didn't exchange large yen bills, and I didn't have any change, so I could
Lovely.
not use the bus. So I was looking and I was like, I'm not going to let this deter me. I'm not going to give up. I'm here. I got to get to those sand dunes. So I looked and I found an e-bike rental and I didn't have time to place my backpack there, like put it away in storage. So I had my like, probably like maybe like 40 or 50 pound backpack
Hmm.
on my back, e-biking through like traffic, basically up a
Nice.
mountain to go to the sand dunes. But it was like through tunnels where there really shouldn't be any bikes and stuff. It was super
Ooh,
harrowing.
sketch.
Yeah, if I tipped, I would be dead.
Listen, listen. Let's not encourage the audience to do things they're not supposed to. That's one of the things
Yeah, maybe
I
not.
try to drive home as much as possible. The reason we like Japan so much is because Japan abides by a very simple rule. Politeness in the Japanese mindset is doing what you are expected to do and not doing what you're not expected to do. E-biking
Mhm.
in the car lane is definitely falls into the don't do that.
Oh yeah, well don't get me wrong. I didn't it wasn't in the lane. It was just that the tunnels had a like a walking path,
Ah,
but it was just very very narrow and rocky. So if I like took a fall, I
uh,
would fall directly into a car.
sketch. Still,
Yeah, so
let's not be the idiot tourists that we're both complaining about.
pretty much. I mean, they'd be surprised. They'd probably be like, "What was he doing out there anyway?" I guess some people get there from Kyoto, but probably not too many.
To be fair, I am also that way sometimes because I travel fairly heavy. I usually when I go to Japan, I travel with one bag and I come back with two.
Hmm.
Um, unless there's some sort of extenuating circumstance where I would need something in my second backpack. For example, not my backpack, my checked luggage. Like I was traveling to Japan this time after a long break, and I had to bring souvenirs to like a bunch of people because I had a lot of my like a lot of the meetings that surround my commitments there essentially because I
Yeah,
had
yeah.
a big tea ceremony meet and it involves several people participating, and that means that these are people of a senior standing, and I am
Mm.
taking up their time and it's being done for my benefit. Therefore, I need to prepare gifts for everyone, and it can't be just a little gift. It has to be like a combination of several gifts. It's
Ah,
yeah, it's a gigantic pain in the ass.
I was wonder though if you're doing omiyage and you're going to Japan,
Hmm.
wouldn't you bring like a burger or something from Texas?
That was so I was told by my tea ceremony instructor, bring American gifts. And I'm like, my first thought is, shit, I can't bring a gun. Japan, do better. But
Here you go, higher up a weapon.
yeah, here's a mastercrafted 1911. Your ancestors
Traditional.
remember this one fondly.
It's a what's it called? A real what's it called? 1,000 times folded American steel Colt 45.
Yeah, yeah. This interestingly enough, you could actually buy steel from some of the battleships that took part in the Pacific War, and a lot of them are currently being used for crafting stuff because those ships, as part of their maintenance, they're having some of the older steel and teak wood stripped. Like I have a couple of pieces of the USS Missouri's teak wood.
I feel like that would give buffs if crafted into a weapon. I don't know how, but I think they would give
It
buffs.
it definitely so well, if you don't know, just a quick reminder, the USS Missouri is famous for being the site of the signing of the Japanese surrender.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's the surrender deck. But yeah, so that's a little piece of memorabilia. But you could hypothetically use like pieces of reclaimed steel and craft something as well, like knives and stuff like that. So definitely something to look into. But no, it was a little bit
Yeah.
too short notice for me to organize something like that, and because I needed souvenirs for 5 different people, what I essentially ended up doing, I hit up the gift shop in our Austin Capitol building, which is surprisingly robust, and I got some kind of local salsa sauce, different
Ooh, yeah.
preparations of it. Yeah, I mean the Japanese are big foodies, especially people of the older generation. They appreciate those things significantly more. What else did I get? They had it, because it was closer to Christmas. It was seasonally appropriate to give Christmas decorations, and
Okay.
for some reason the Capitol just has a banging line of Christmas decorations. They're like nice. They're made with enamel, and they're shiny, and they have pieces of Christmas decorations made out of the same granite as the building itself. So little
Oh, cool.
yeah, little knickknacks like that. And so
Yeah.
it's appropriate to combine little knickknacks like that into a like a care package for a single person. And I needed to assemble 5 of those. So I threw several packages of Vermont maple syrup on top of that.
That was gonna be one of mine. I was like, yeah, maple syrup and maybe even peanut butter, considering they like don't have it.
Hmm. I did not think about peanut butter. It's such a low tier condiment for, at least in my perception. Like
Hmm.
it lacks any kind of significant cultural weight. I don't know if it would be well perceived. And I mean, they have access to peanuts, so I would think they have peanut butter there, at least in some form.
I could only find import. It's one of my favorite foods. Like
Huh.
I'm a big peanut butter guy, taste wise and stuff. And I just started maybe 3 weeks in, started craving it bad. I
Interesting.
could not find it. I had to go to an import store.
Ha, so they just probably don't have a culture of making it, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting, interesting. Well, apparently maple syrup is very popular there because, well, they just don't have maple syrup. They don't make it natively,
Yeah.
but the Japanese are big fans of like involved confectionery. That's why, for example, their traditional syrups are usually made out of melted sugars. So that was actually a very big hit with everyone. So for future reference, whenever you need to bring souvenirs to the Japanese, just buy a big old bottle of Vermont maple syrup and you'll be golden.
That's good to know, actually. So, like, maple syrup was my first thought when I was thinking like what
Mm,
I would bring. And the nice thing too is like you could even just do that as a general gift because you could have
yeah.
access to like the mini containers, the ones that are
Mm.
like less than an ounce or like 1 ounce, and you could just throw those out like candy. Just give them to anyone.
Yeah, I mean, it's if it's checked luggage, it can be big bottles, and usually if it's a gift that's like a standalone thing to someone of an important position, like for
Sure,
example,
sure.
I'm a member of the Society for the Preservation of Swordsmithing, and because
Oh,
of that, yeah, I need to go and bow down to people who are of high social standing, and like I can't get away with shitty little sampler bottles. I had to bring something that looks like a whiskey bottle.
yeah. The real big glass ones.
Yeah,
You can
yeah,
still
yeah.
get them at you can still get them for 20 bucks at the like New Hampshire, Vermont Welcome Center, but still they look
Probably.
good.
Yeah, I mean, it looks good. It's like a big solid piece of glass. There's like a big big mysterious liquid inside.
Ambrosia, golden ambrosia.
Essentially, yeah. For their love of sweets and it not being entirely corn syrup and sugar, yeah, it's good enough.
Yeah. Do you ever mess around with swordsmithing yourself then?
I don't swordsmith. So I'm on the collector's side, and I'm more of an
Hmm.
it's a volunteer administrative role essentially. So I've been,
Oh.
yeah, during my last visit, I've been gifted an antique tsuba just so that, I have a piece of a collector's item to speak of, so that I'm not a not
There you go.
so that I'm not a barefoot cobbler essentially. Um, but yeah, it's more on the collecting side of things because the purpose of this particular organization is to keep the trades alive essentially. They
Gotcha. Yeah.
do encourage and facilitate training of people outside of Japan, so they've trained people in smithing, in creating furnishings, even in polishing, but still the core craftsmanship is kept internally. And
Hmm.
I only dabble in it in a utilitarian sense because I need to maintain my kitchen knives. So because of that, I know how to use a water stone.
Yeah, yeah, I've seen you do that on stream, so
Well,
figured that.
you see, what I'm doing on stream is not something I'm good at doing or understand anything about. I'm ad-libbing the entire process.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
that was
With the Mall Ninja sword.
exactly, that was sort of the purpose of the exercise. It started because I don't have my primary cutting sword with me. It's stuck in Russia, and for a variety of reasons, I can't bring it here right now.
Why is it stuck in Russia?
Regardless, let's gloss over that. Let's not dig that rabbit hole too deep. But the point is,
Oh,
I
sweet.
don't have access to it right now. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
and the sword that I use for like everyday practice, it's not a Japanese made sword, it's a Kashanwei replica sword essentially. But it's a replica that's made out of
Hmm.
spring steel. Like it's a practical use sword essentially. It's not expensive enough that I would sweat over it being damaged during cutting, for example. But it still costs like
Yeah,
a
yeah.
pretty chunk of change. I think I got it for shit, what did I pay for it? Something in approximation of $800 essentially. And
Gotcha.
yeah, then I had to pay for it to be reprofiled by an actual master polisher so that it would have a correct cutting edge.
I don't know much about like smithing swords or anything. I did actually have a unique experience where one of the I've been around, and there was this one place I was one time where they had a forge, and it was part of the curriculum to use the forge if you
Mm,
wanted. And so they taught us how to like make knives in the forge and stuff like that. So I learned a little bit of like knife making,
mm.
but never like full sword or anything like
So
that.
the thing is, I wouldn't trust myself to try to shape something out of metal. I just lack
Hmm.
the subject matter expertise. I could probably learn it if I invested enough time into it, because 10,000 hours of anything will put you within a reasonable level of expertise. But I just don't have the
Yeah.
bandwidth for that, nor do I really have a case for it. But what I was essentially considering is just buying the same model of replica sword, just buying another Kashanwei sword that's heavy enough for me to use for cutting, and just maybe attempting to reprofile it myself. And then I got to think that maybe I don't want to experiment with an $800 sword. And I created
Yeah.
that as like a beat for the community, saying that, hey, listen, if you fund this oversized piece of cutlery, we'll make it funny, and I will attempt to sharpen it into something reasonable, which is
Yeah.
essentially what
Yeah.
happened. It wasn't an issue of just monetary investment for me because there was no problem in buying a $70 piece of metal. The problem
Right.
was in
Right.
confirming that there's enough organic interest for people to actually tune in to watch it, which is why I had a
Mm.
dono goal. And if anything, by the time we got to the dono goal, it got upmarked on Amazon, so I still had to pay the difference out of pocket in addition to any materials I would be using for it anyway.
Yeah, yeah, no, I think everyone should have like as a dono goal, or I don't know if you have a throne, but I think it's funny for
Yeah.
everyone to put at least one cool item on there, like Charlie's 50-pound
Ah,
cheese
yeah,
wheel, for
yeah.
example.
I am a proud contributor to the cheese wheel.
Yeah, nice, nice. Yeah, I put up practical stuff.
I have practical stuff on my throne. I have some stuff on my throne that technically breaches their TOS. I just know that no one is going to pay for it, therefore I just keep it as bookmarks for myself.
Yeah.
For some reason they frown on bulk buying ammo. I don't know why.
Yeah, I don't know why we can't fund that through Throne. That's weird. We should. I think there's a lot of I think there's a lot of VTubers who would take to that, like
There,
right away.
yeah, there. I mean, there is a pretty substantial community of quote unquote tactical VTubers. Just everyone who is at least somewhat gun adjacent.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not as scandalous as certain parts of VT would like to believe.
No, that's for sure. I mean, like, it is funny coming with, the American perspective. Obviously, I don't want to get into like the political side of it or anything, but the American perspective versus like the European and Asian perspective, where guns for us are just a very common reality and a normal thing. And you surprise people sometimes when you're like, oh yeah, I've shot, I own a gun, I've owned a gun, and people are like, what? Huh? And I'm like, yeah, of course. I had a gun. I don't have one now, but I've owned one before.
I mean, the reactions I would get between Europeans and between different Europeans and the Japanese are also very different.
Hmm.
because, well, I don't think it's political. I think it's more of a cultural commentary, and it has a lot to do with how societies and how specific countries were formed. Like the reason gun culture is so ingrained into the US is because we're a country that was created with civilian arms in the hands of people rebelling against an oppressive power.
Yeah.
Yeah, other states were formed differently. Sometimes they're breakaways from pre-existing countries. Sometimes they were just granted leniency or granted land as a consequence of certain changes in the region, or maybe they were even created by a third party. Uh, but that's kind of besides the point. The universal response from European men that I encounter is, "Damn, that is so fucking cool. I wish we had that." I want to shoot guns too. God fucking damn it. And the Japanese are usually also impressed if you bring it up in appropriate circles. Like
Yeah.
it's not a conversation topic that I'm going to bring up, in the spinster circle of people practicing tea ceremony.
Right.
Not exactly the time or place to do that. But for example, even someone who is engaged in collecting samurai swords, those people would be more understanding, maybe more on on the craft appreciation of it. So, like, I wouldn't try to flex a polymer brick that is my carry Glock. I would probably bring up something that's like an artisan-made sharpshooter rifle that's
Right.
specifically engineered to hit sub-MOA groups at a kilometer away. Because again, yeah, because there's craftsmanship that those people are able to appreciate. And then again, Japan is also home to a rabid airsoft community.
Yeah, it did come from there actually. They like invented it.
Did they?
Yeah, that's all like Tokyo Marui and all the first airsoft guns come out of Japan.
Mm.
So they I believe they're
Ah,
the ones who invented it.
I was not aware of that. But you know what? The nonsensical naming does sort of make that very plausible.
True. But there are some contexts, for example, bringing up guns that I never would have expected to work, but do work. So I have a friend
Mm.
who he spends a lot of time abroad. He's basically a digital nomad, right? And he spends most of the time in South
Mm.
Korea and Japan, back and forth.
Hmm.
And he does a lot of dating while he's there, and has told me that every single time he'll date like a Japanese girl or a Korean girl, and then bring up the fact that like, oh yeah, he owns a bunch of guns and he shot them. They all they're like, what? Really? Whoa! They're like, it's like a little bit of danger or something. They're impressed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They like the cowboy aesthetic.
Yeah.
As I always say, yeah, be the American the Japanese imagine you to be.
Dude, it works so well. I mean, like when I was in more rural areas, like, there's a lot of areas in Japan where they don't encounter tourists at all because no tourist would ever go there.
Hmm.
And in those
Yeah.
areas, I found that to really, really help me out kind of living with that mindset, because if I just act like the big goofy like smiley extroverted American, like haha man, they love me for it because it's almost what they expected rather than something else.
Hmm.
And so they loved it. Like I would use like Japanese, almost it feels almost like an act maybe, but I would use it a little bit wrong on purpose because it made them laugh so much. And they thought it was
Ah,
like endearing and stuff, and I was just like, yeah, we're just having fun. I'm making them laugh, it's whatever.
nice, nice. I mean, as long as that worked out for you, I will probably be looking for more secluded areas next time I'm in Japan because my experience was very much poisoned by the over tourism of Kyoto specifically.
Yeah.
Like the places that I used to enjoy have definitely suffered from an overwhelming flow of tourists, and it seems that the locals are also becoming somewhat disgruntled about that and just not sure what can be done right now
Mm.
to sort of stave it off. So I
Yeah.
will likely be just shifting my attentions to, for example, not spending as much time in Kyoto and maybe going to something that's a little bit more remote or more internally known as a tourist destination like Aizawa Kamatsu.
Yep, yep. I've kind of followed this rule that I when I was going on my journeys, right? I came up with this rule I called like the one street over rule almost, which was that
Hmm.
tourists are very predictable. They know what the
Yeah.
popular things in Japan are, and they're going to be there. And what I found 100% of the time is if you go to the popular place and then you go one street over, it is completely abandoned and there's no one there. So, using that principle,
Hmm.
as long as I dodged certain train lines or certain stations, I found myself completely able to avoid tourists entirely. I mean, of course, there's
Hmm.
areas too, like, there's like no one in Tohoku outside of Sendai. And Kyushu is also pretty unexplored for a lot of tourists.
That does make sense. I did make the mistake, but that was not my mistake entirely because I was going off of someone else's schedule. but we did land into a pretty high tourist season. It was end of October, beginning November.
Hmm.
So that's considered to be a high tourist season because the summer heat has already died off and the maples have started turning red.
Yeah.
Because of that, you're going to have like a big influx of tourists. And because of that, the one over street rule didn't really work for Kyoto specifically because even if you went further out, for example, I make a regular pilgrimage to Mount Kurama.
Hmm. Oh yeah, I love Kurama.
Yeah, like you need to be aware of the fact that Kurama exists. You need to be aware of the, ways to get around and things to do there. But despite that, there were still a shit ton of people.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of becoming more well known. You know, some guides talk about the hike between Kibuneguchi and Kurama and are doing a lot of that. So,
Yeah, I usually go the other way around.
hmm,
I start at Kurama and I go to Kibune.
yeah, that route. I mean, either direction, but like that route in general is becoming
Mm,
more well known. So it's like
yeah.
Takayama in Gifu, where it was pretty
Mm,
not known at all for a very long time, and then it really got discovered and just became like crazy popular in the last 2 years to the point where tourists are like
yeah.
taking it over.
That's unfortunate. I mean, it's not as bad as like Hyomizudera.
Hmm.
That's
Oh yeah.
it's just yeah, it's generally a waste of time at this point because the observation deck is permanently filled with people. The shopping street, Sandenzaka in front of it is lousy with tourists as well, and
Yeah.
it's a different quality of tourists than it used to be because I used to travel to Japan pretty frequently during high tourist season. I usually went during it was probably like at the tail end of the sakura bloom
Yep.
because we had a regular event in Kyoto that we had to attend, therefore we were tied down to those specific dates. And we would, we would begrudgingly coexist with tourist crowds, but those tourist crowds would be predominantly either other Japanese people or they would be Chinese tourist groups, and there would be a little bit of European sort of sprinkled here and there.
Hmm.
Uh, these days, it's a lot of Southeast Asia. It's a lot of European tourists. It's predominantly foreigners now. And not only do they stand out like a sore thumb, they like I don't want to hear French when I go to Japan. I'm sorry. Uh, but just on top of that, some of them have very unsightly habits that I don't know, they just don't gel well with the tourist experience. Like you'll have people from cultures where it's still considered to be a sign of opulence to be skinny fat with like a nice distended visceral fat belly, and when you put a kimono over that, it just looks gaudy.
Even aside from that too, I think one of the big things that I found, and this actually even went from my friends, I turned them on to this idea, was when you're in a bigger group like tour groups or something like that, you can kind of get away with not looking around you and recognizing the culture that you're in and how you should be acting.
Mm,
I mean, even in smaller
yeah.
groups, like my friends, we were on the Shinkansen, and I was with my friends for the first time, meeting up with them in this most recent trip. And, there was three of
Mm,
them, and they were talking wicked loud. And I went over and stuff, and I was like, dude, quiet down, whisper, come on, dude. And he's like, well, wait, why
yeah.
should I whisper? And I'm like, listen. I just told him, listen. And he shut up for a second and heard nothing in the entire train car. And I'm like, that's why.
That's a very important experience in cultural learning. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I just think, when you're being somewhere, like I mean, this is my personal thing. I don't fault people if they don't do this, but it is my personal like experience and personal desire that if I'm going to go to another country or another place, I'm going to try and learn a little bit of the language. I'm going to try and understand the
Yeah.
norms, and I'm going to try my best to be respectful, you know?
Yeah, have the common decency to understand how to operate in the place you're going.
Yeah.
Not every place in the world is fucking Cabo, okay?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's a shame because, like, yeah, you'll run into situations where it's like, yeah, it's a group of friends and that's great, but not, the subway's not the place for it, and the Shinkansen's not the place for it. And
Yeah.
if everyone's being quiet around you, take a hint.
Yeah, exactly. I have the experience of having to chaperone groups of people into behaving, so yeah, I'm familiar with that.
But if you go out to
Uh,
like Tohoku or the middle of Kyushu even, or I mean of course Hokkaido, yeah, you stop running into
I don't
tourists.
like Kyushu. I'm sorry, I'm
Oh, you
gonna be that
don't?
guy. I don't like Kyushu.
No, it's
I do not
great.
like. I've been listen. I've been to Fukuoka.
Yeah.
It's very cute that they have their little fucking tech accelerator, smart village or whatever the fuck that is. They can keep doing that for another 50 years. But I don't know. The cuisine is kind of mid, and the weather is fucking cold, and yeah. It's not different from any other large urbanized area in Japan.
Yeah,
That's the
yeah.
same reason I diss Tokyo, for example. There's no reason to go to Tokyo because you can do all of the Tokyo things in any other urbanized city in Japan.
Yep. Yep. I agree with that. Like I think first trip people, of course, you go to Tokyo for a little bit, but I always tell people to spend a lot of time in Kansai. Um
I would dispute the first trip comment. I would say for the first trip, stay as far the fuck away from Tokyo as you can because there's nothing for you to do there.
Listen, reality speaking though, there's no way like I agree. I agree. Like if I was like knowing what I know, I'm like, yeah, you probably don't go to Tokyo, but try and convince
There you
someone on
go.
their first Japan trip not to go to Tokyo. You know what I mean? It's just
I
like tell
I
them, yeah.
I did that.
You
I
did
did
that?
that. I did that. My dad asked me to sort of for pointers on how to go to Japan. My first pointer was, well, first of all, you're taking me just to function correctly there.
Of course, yeah.
But yeah, my second tip was we jettison Tokyo fucking entirely. We just ignore it as a landmass, and we book like a good majority of our time in Kyoto. Trust me, it's going to be lit.
Yeah, no, and it is. It is every time. I do think that Tokyo is important for like, listen, if you are going to Japan because you like anime, you gotta go make the pilgrimage to Akihabara and maybe Big Sight.
Sure,
So it's like,
sure. Exactly. Like it makes sense for me to go to Akiba just to take in the scenery. Like if you're a VTuber, you should probably go to Akiba
yeah,
just to experience an entire street out in real life where every other shop is blasting Hoshomari's treasure box.
exactly. It's like it's our home, right? We have to make a pilgrimage there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I get it because Tokyo as a whole is like, yeah. I mean, the thing is, Tokyo Tower obviously and Skytree, you can get almost as good as a view from the Metropolitan Building for free, and many other buildings. And it's like, it just, yeah, it's cool to see the
Listen,
Imperial Palace.
Skytree was cool. I'm not going to detract from that. As a karateka, I very much like having my feet very firmly planted into the ground, maybe even grabbing on with my toes a little harder.
Yeah,
Like we're not built for that kind of elevation. But it's cool to experience the nighttime landscape is very pretty, but I don't appreciate like it's worth doing once and that is it. Just for how much time you need to spend doing that.
hmm
My general takeaway is that Skytree is only worth doing because it's fairly close to Asakusa anyway, and you're going to go to Sensoji eventually. I had a hotel in Sensoji, so
yep,
it was walking distance for me either way. I didn't
same.
have to specifically go to Skytree to go to Skytree.
Right, right. Yeah, I actually had the same
Yeah.
experience. I stayed right near Sensoji. Asakusa, I think, is just a great place to stay if you are going to Tokyo
Yeah.
because it's like fairly cheap and you are in some pretty cool places. So,
And like everything is either two stops away by metro or it's walking distance from you.
oh yeah, you can walk to Akiba from there, and it's like, whoo,
Yeah.
easy. It's fun. It's fun. But
Yeah.
I think what I like and what made it easy for me to enjoy places like Kyushu and really everywhere is really Pokemon brain rot because the Pokemon regions 1 through 4, yeah, they're all styled after those places. So going through Kyushu with the idea in the back of my head of this is Hoenn really helps, and you get to see all the sites and be like, oh, I know this. Like I've been here in the game, So that sort of brain
Mm.
rot helped me. But I really like Kyushu for just like how volcanic it is around Mount Aso, and Nagasaki is a really cool skyline, some really great night views.
Mm.
Yufuin and the whole trip over there, Beppu and all that stuff, Kagoshima with the Sakurajima and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, I think it's a lot to do in Kyushu if you have like an extra week. I wouldn't go there if you're not like if you have over 2 weeks in Japan, I'd probably go. But if you don't, I'd stay
Yeah,
in
like
Kansai.
see if you if you have an abundance of time and if you're going specifically there, yeah, sure do that. Like we went to Nagoya for a week once.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to experience Nagoya and its surrounding because it's a little bit different from Tokyo. It's a little bit different from Kyoto. It's also not, as swamped by people going there because, well, there's basically nothing to do in Nagoya.
Boy, do I know it.
You're gonna listen. The reconstructed castle museum is okay. Like it's there. Um, it's
I passed through a
how should
lot.
I
I've
put?
stopped there a few times and spent time there, but I passed through way more than I stopped.
Exactly. Like most of my time in Nagoya was spent in the Budokan, training on the judo floor.
Yeah.
That's most of my recollections of Nagoya. There are some cutesy places within sort of train distance, like what was it? Inuyama, I think, is near there,
Hmm.
which is like a historic surviving castle because it's still private and it was out of the way of any bombing runs. Uh, but yeah, other than that, not a lot to do there that would be Nagoya specific.
Yeah, yeah. Nagoya to me was very much like when we talk about Japanese big cities being the same, Nagoya was the poster
Yeah,
child of that for me, where it's just like, that is a
yeah.
Japanese city.
Well, listen, we did sort of contribute to it being that way,
Yeah,
be because, something happened.
that's true. Something did happen.
Yeah, something did happen. So a lot of those cities were reconstructed all at the same time, right around, the late 50s and 60s.
Yeah, yeah.
And because of that, the logic behind them is very similar, and that's why a lot of them have those reconstructed, modernized replica castles.
Totally, totally. Yeah, it is wild to go to every single temple and every single castle in Japan and see, and it burned down in 1940s.
How did that
How did
happen, I
that happen?
wonder?
I wonder. Yep,
Well, there is there is
everyone.
there is one there is one exception. There is one exception. Toyotomi Hideyoshi's castle, what the fuck, Fushimi
Okay.
Inari-jo. That one actually burned down naturally, but that was way before the 40s.
Ah, there you go.
Yeah.
And I think I remember hearing too that oh god, I'm forgetting the city name. Darn. It's above Fukui on the other coast there. Kanazawa. Kanazawa also was spared a lot of
Mm,
bombing.
yeah. Well, Kyoto was deliberately spared bombings because it was a political decision.
Yeah, yeah.
It was a political decision based on the counsel to the U.S. president saying that we can do whatever like the war needs demand in terms of Tokyo, but if a single spark falls on Kyoto, we'll never be able to do business with the Japanese again.
Yep, that's fair. That's reasonable.
And it was never about being a destructive war. So that's
Yeah.
why Kyoto was spared, and Japanese generals were well aware of the fact that despite the fact that bombers passed over Kyoto, they never dropped payloads. That's why they vacationed in Kyoto during the war.
Kyoto's it's a poppin' place. I don't know what to say.
Well, it's the Imperial Castle, and it is very much the well-guarded marble of Japanese history.
Yeah, yeah.
Naturally, you have some standout locations like Yasukuni Jinja. Am I thinking of Yasukuni? Yes, I am thinking of Yasukuni in Tokyo. No, wait.
Where's the really old I think it's on Shikoku, the
I'm
really old one where the pilgrimage like begins or ends, I forget.
mm, uh I forgot. I looked up the route for the pilgrimage, but since I'm usually concentrated in one city. Yes, Yasukuni is in Tokyo. No, I'm sometimes I have this fucking brain rot where I'll confuse names. I was thinking Yasukuni, but then maybe I was misremembering it was Yasuka. No, Yasuka is in Kyoto, and Yasukuni is the military shrine in Tokyo.
Ah, yeah, gotcha.
Speaking of which, you've mentioned the Imperial Palace. Yeah, you mentioned the Imperial Palace. There's actually a cool life hack that I've learned about visiting the Imperial Palace in Kyoto.
Oh, what is it?
Apparently, apparently you have the part that is just completely unused now and only exists as a museum. But there's also a secluded part of the palace that is still in use by the royal family.
Oh.
And yes, and whenever it's not in use, it is semi-open to the public. So what you need to do is you arrive there earlier in the morning and you buy a ticket and you submit your sort of personal details to to them when you book a specific slot because you can only tour that place as part of a group of a guided tour.
Yeah.
And my assumption is that they also run a background check on you because there's usually a gap of like 3 to 4 hours between when you can book a spot and when you're actually being let into uh, the palace segment,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you also need to show like your government issued photo ID to go through. So I assume they also do some sort of vetting as well as verifying that you are who you said you are.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very nice. It's like a still a well maintained piece of the palace. It is essentially a tea garden. Like it's not um it is not a display of opulence or
Yeah.
anything like that. Like the things you find there are very core Japanese things, such as gardens, tea rooms, I don't know, the well manicured trees and whatnot.
Yeah,
They are
yeah.
still going to be it's the same thing that you can find essentially anywhere, but it is in the private use and built for the exclusive use by the royal family.
I think like one of the just thinking on that line of like very traditional and stuff like that. One of the most haunting things that I did in Japan is are you're familiar with the like the original Seven Emperor, like the mythological ones?
I don't believe I am. Like my recollection of the Imperial Dynasty essentially is you have the Kojiki, so the mythological origins of the Imperial family, and then somewhere in the Yayoi period that sort of feeds into the modern dynasty.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly it. But like back in the first period, I think it was seven. I think there was seven like emperors that are thought to be mythological and not like we're not like they're not. It's like not conspiracy, but they're probably not real people, right?
Sure, yeah.
But the first one was Emperor Jimmu. He was said to be the first
Hmm.
emperor of all of Japan. And what was really crazy
Hmm.
to me was his tomb was in Kashihara, like right near in Nara,
Hmm.
right? And I went there and it was just completely abandoned. And you would think that even if it is mythological, like that is still part of like the original origin story. So you'd think that it would be like, you know, still fairly popular, but it was just so haunting because it was wicked quiet and there were these enormous trees on both sides, absolutely no one there. And it leads like in that, you know, that sandy ground that leads up to the enshrined
Hmm.
temple area, just completely
Mm.
silent, completely abandoned. And it's said that's where the first emperor was said to be.
Abandoned in what sense? Is it not well kept,
No,
or is it just devoid of people?
devoid of people. Sorry, it's incredibly well kept,
Ah,
but it's just completely devoid of people, and it's haunting. It was like eerie. It was like, man, this is unnerving.
I've been to the burial place of Emperor Meiji,
Hmm.
because his burial mound is near. So it's where Toyotomi Hideyoshi's castle used to be before it burned down. So that is, I believe, that is where Emperor Meiji's tomb is right now,
Uh huh.
and it's the same way. I think so. It's a combination of two things. First of all, there's not really a lot to do there
No, for sure. It's
because
just a yeah,
it's yeah, it's not a temple, it is a resting place because the emperor is technically seen as part of the Shinto pantheon. The place is going to be essentially treated like a Shinto shrine, but there are no regular shrine activities that take place there, therefore there's no reason for people to go there. And that sort of on top of it builds the conditions for there really not being anything for tourists to pursue there because nothing happens there.
yeah,
It's just a mound that is you can't even get to the tomb proper because it's like a good 100 yards away from where you're able to stand.
exactly. Yeah, same deal. It was just, you know, I thought that maybe I didn't know I like because I had learned about the first emperor thing while I was there, and I thought like, oh wow,
Hmm.
this is like the resting place of the mythological first emperor. That must be a big deal. And then just to see nobody there, I was like, does nobody believe the story, or is it just like, you know, because every other temple I'd run
Ah,
into someone, you know, or any other burial
yeah,
mound
but
I'd run
it's
into someone.
really at burial mounds.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it was time of day, but I just I was surprised. I was surprised where I was just like, I thought it'd be a bigger deal.
I think we also need to separate actual burial spots, actual tombs, and shrines where someone is personified or
Yeah.
enshrined. Because there is I believe, one of the more, not sure if it's a modern shrine, but there is a shrine where one of the Japanese emperors is the Shintai, the central entity, in Osaka, and
Hmm.
it's a fairly central and fairly well-trafficked jinja, and it sits like it's like walking distance from Dotonbori.
Oh, I'm sure I've
I
passed it
think
a million times.
I'm sure you have. I would need to look up. I'm pretty sure I've bought some omamori there as well, but it's just the nature of the place. The jinjas are generally a celebration of like life and current things, and they participate in the life of the community. And a tomb is a fucking tomb,
Yeah.
and at that, it is also a Shinto cult tomb. While technically burial processions are traditionally handled by the Buddhist cult.
Mm.
So I don't know, maybe that disconnect also contributes to that. But generally, like, not a lot of things happen around tombs because tombs are supposed to be that. They're supposed to be resting places.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, it was just like like I said, it was I think it was like an enshrined tomb situation, right? Where it's kind of like both. They're
Mm,
like, yeah, he's enshrined here and it's the tomb or something like that. But yeah, it was just kind of
mm.
like I don't know. I probably was coming at it from a very American perspective where I was like, oh, the first emperor, that'd be like George Washington, you know? And it's like I expected more, but then again, I don't know how many Japanese people actually even believe in that, as like
Listen,
a real thing. So it
but
might just
even
be.
s- so here's the thing. Let's analogize that to George Washington. Like, we don't have a tomb of George Washington as a notable place. There's the Washington Memorial,
Yeah.
which is different, and like that is known and again well traveled, frequently featured in postcards and whatnot. But not a lot of emphasis or traffic is usually placed on actual graveyards, with the rare exception of maybe the person not having any kind of different memorial. A notable example of that would be someone who's a bit more of a niche celebrity. Like there's Masutatsu Ayama's grave,
Hmm.
because there's really not any other memorial for him because he's relevant in the family of karate styles that he founded, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
So there's not like there's probably is a different memorial for him somewhere, but the primary place of pilgrimage that's not a dojo, or specifically not the historical dojo, is going to be his grave. And that also unfortunately creates situations of fucking idiots going there and doing stupid shit in the middle of the graveyard.
Ugh. Yeah, that's rough.
Yeah.
None of that. I actually that
Yeah.
reminds me of karate. Speaking of karate, it was really cool getting to go
Mm.
to the main karate dojo in Okinawa. That was pretty cool.
There's a main karate dojo in Okinawa. I'm pretty sure they've had some gang wars about not really
Oh,
being
do
able to
they?
settle that.
There was one really big one, so I went to that one.
I assume it's just their local Budokan, which is like their place for holding events that they all agree in principle does not centrally belong to a specific ryuha. Uh, it may be managed by something like, I don't know, the Kobudo Federation or the Goju-Ryu Federation. Mm, But usually there's not like one central dojo. Yeah, like there's a central dojo for judo because it's a like there are two geographical places that are known for being the Judo Kodokan, where the style and the system was created by a specific person, because karate predates judo significantly, and it is also significantly more fractured. There are not different styles of judo. There is just judo as the offshoot of a multitude of styles of jujitsu. Karate was always very stratified. It was first of all stratified by the original tradition that it derives from, it being shurite or nahate, and then it crystallizes into very specific branches, it being either Goju-ryu, Shito-ryu, Shotokan, and then you also have the Japanese styles that sort of sprung up from it.
Got it. Yeah, I might have been under a misconception. I thought that karate was like invented in Okinawa. I thought that was the whole thing, or like at least one of the main styles or something.
So, well, that depends on how deep we want to dig.
Hmm.
The mythological origins of it is that it is derived from the five animal styles that were brought over as a tradition of fist fighting. So that there's dispute whether it was five animal styles or it was just Shaolin Kempo,
Hmm.
and different styles of Kempo essentially were placed in different spots of Okinawa, just depending on what kind of trade relations they had with northern China or southern China, because you have that delineation between southern and northern styles. Southern styles, if I'm not confusing anything, would be more based on crane fist and things like, and the northern styles would be based in things like tiger fist.
That's so cool. Sorry,
Yeah,
I just have to be like, oh man, the 5 animal styles. Oh, ah,
yeah, the names are metal, so
that's so
there's no
cool.
argument there. Yeah, monkey fist is not real though. That's a style that was invented by Jackie Chan for a movie.
Oh, okay, cool.
Um, yeah, yeah. So, and those styles sort of germinated in Okinawa as their local systems of learning, and it was essentially a form of local kickboxing that then stratified into. It started as family schools that then stratified into more organized, more unified schools, and that's why you have the two main lines of Nahate and Shurite, Naha and Shuri being Okinawan cities.
Yep. Oh, I was gonna say,
Then
yeah. Wow, I just realized that now. I was like, oh, nah, shooty, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then predominantly in the, well, Goju-ryu and Shotokan both were then popularized in mainland Japan significantly later. Goju-ryu having some unfortunate associations with the Yakuza and specifically Yamaguchi-gumi, but that's besides the point.
Hmm,
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, usually when you see a dojo that typically belongs to the Goju-ryu style and it has its logo features the inside of a clenched fist, it is very likely that it has a Yakuza association, and I may have trained in some of those. That's besides the point.
That's so
But
cool that there's Yakuza aligned karate. Oh man.
well, listen, karate was their recruitment base for a lot of their enforcers and bodyguards.
Makes
I
sense.
mean, where else do you need physically fit people who are kind of strung up on, making a living?
Yeah.
You go there to hire muscle, or you fund a dojo, and therefore you use them as a consistent source of personnel. So that was a practice that was prevalent.
Yeah. I've only had 2 experiences with the Yakuza when I've been in Japan. Both of them were pretty
Mm,
positive though. But because I never really like saw the negative side. But like the first one
mm,
was I was in Yamaguchi and staying at a like a local like not a ryokan, it like a bathhouse basically, like an old style
mm,
like tiled bathhouse from the 50s 60s,
mm.
Showa era stuff. And the
Yeah.
ratings were really really low online. It was a cheap place to stay for the night, and the owner was really really
Mm.
nice, but the ratings were low, really low, and I was wondering why. So I was looking, and all of the translated comments and reviews all said very subtly that it was where the Yakuza were and where they would go to bathe, because it was like stuff like, oh, this guy
Because where
lets
else
in.
are you gonna go?
Yeah, yeah. The mayor, the way they phrased it was amazing, though. It was stuff like, oh, the owner of this place lets in the people the mayor had to deal with in the past, or, those sorts of troublemakers, but never say them by name.
Arenomono.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. They try to avoid actually naming them directly as much as possible.
Oh, man, it was adorable.
Yeah, I've never had direct dealings, fortunately. I try to stay away from criminality
Oh,
just
totally.
because
Yeah.
usually it's never a source of anything good. Like cavorting with criminal elements rarely enriches your life.
Yeah.
But an instructor that I studied under at a certain point, because he did work for, I believe it was Yamaguchi Gumi, but because of that, in his advanced age, he had access to certain dojos just to rent out at a favorable rate. So
Nice. Nice.
that is how I know. So yeah.
Yep.
I mean, they're nice dojos. Nothing about them stands out. It's not like
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
have like a finger cutting board in the corner or anything like that. Um, but as I was saying, after those styles sort of became rooted in Japan, in mainland Japan, the Kyokushin line of karate also sprung up. It has joint parentage between Goju-ryu and Shotokan because it sort of combines elements of them. And that is considered like a core Japanese style, as opposed to, for example, Goju-ryu or Shorin-ryu, those being core Okinawan styles.
Gotcha. Well, that's okay, because when I was a kid, I learned American flag bandana, American karate.
Listen, I trained in an American flag bandana throughout most of my
Yeah.
life, but I still trained in the Japanese
Of
style.
course, of course. It's just a really cool, like, cultural it's a really cool cultural like permeation that we have of it, which is like the
Yeah.
almost like mullet, yeah, American flag bandana karate stuff where you're like saluting the flag, but also like respect, self-discipline, and karate.
It's not internally conflicting. Like you
No,
can have a kamiza, and it is expected to also have your nation's flag in the kamiza. They're not mutually exclusive things.
totally, yeah. It feels like the best way I can describe it is it's like the Power Rangers form of martial arts, the community center Americana vibe martial arts.
No, see, I don't like that. I don't want to associate with that because I think that a lot of the popularity of karate was its own downfall in the States.
That's true.
American karate are the American anime fans of the karate community, essentially.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, the style and like the branding of karate has been commoditized by people who don't know their ass from a hole in the ground.
totally, totally.
And they know even less about training methods. And because of that, like when people in America hear karate, they think like strip mall karate that is glorified daycare.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, in a majority of cases, they're also right.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, because anyone who's actually prepared to sweat, bleed, and eat shit, those people go to MMA or Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. It's very hard to funnel them into karate just because of that negative reputation. Kyokushin was inoculated from it up to a certain extent by merit of it being a full contact style. But even then, it is still very much prone to being diluted. Like I've made it when I was visiting Hawaii, I've dropped in for a training session with a historical Kyokushin dojo, and like it's in a very sad state, partially because it's very isolated, but at the same part, it's just a seniors home because
Oh,
young people don't really go like there are Japanese people living in Hawaii, but like it's treated more as a community center as opposed to a place where you would train murderers because
right.
because all of the guys that want to learn to fight, they go to Josh Barnett's gym and they do Muay Thai and grappling there,
Yep.
and like none of them make it to the karate school because well the karate school is at this point so detached from any kind of applicability that it sits there and it's dying in slow-mo,
Yep.
which is disheartening.
There's one my experience growing up, I was actually very lucky to not fall into one of those like McDojos, I guess we would say, because while it was like the
Yeah.
American karate thing, I have a ton of respect for my teacher from back then. He was actually like he was part of the Olympic team and he trained for a very long time in South Korea and Japan and has a bunch of like awards. You know, I mean a lot of people can claim to be in the Martial Arts Hall of Fame. It's pretty big, but he is and stuff like that. And he was always just like really really serious about it, and it was very tied to the schooling system too. So there, it was like I don't know, it was a comfy vibe, right? Where it was very community oriented, but also
Yeah.
very serious. Where it was like they're not a glorified daycare at all. Like they're really drilling in discipline, respect, self reliance, and all that stuff. But they're just very tied to the schools. Where like they're making sure everyone's doing their homework too and not acting up in
Yeah.
class. It's like a second check policing system almost. But they were very serious and very good.
I'd say that's healthy. That is realistically a job that a sensei is supposed to do, and
Mm,
I think that's a healthier community role than strictly focusing on preparing athletes for sporting competition. That's like the other end of the horseshoe that is kind of detrimental to the practice, I would
yeah,
say.
yeah. I tried to go back as an adult actually, and the awkward thing was they do have adult classes, and they had a ton of like
Mm.
second degrees and third degree adults. But the problem was because I was starting over as a beginner, which I requested, it was very much tough because I couldn't have anyone at my belt level or around my age to really bounce off of. So it was a lot of kids and a lot of teens because the class was like like 13 and up, and so there was a lot of
Mm.
teenagers who how to describe it was when you're a kid, like a lot of people start very very early in that school. So if they
Yeah.
were a kid going through the program, they got like a junior black belt, basically like a kid's version of a black belt, and then graduated through the
Yeah.
adult program. So anyone who did that was already past my belt level, even though they were like 14, 15, right? So anyone I was
Mm.
with were teenagers who were doing karate for the first time as white belts when they were 14, 15. So they didn't care that much. They weren't
Mhm.
heavily invested. And it was really hard because like I didn't have anyone I could really bounce off of and take it seriously with. So I was like, as much as I respect you guys and I love you guys, it's like this isn't the place for me right now. But maybe if I had a good rival someday.
Yeah, that's a very big component of it. Like it's hard to get invested if there are no stakes or no consequences for letting things slide, so to speak. Like
Yeah.
you need a reason to exert effort in training, and the reason in full contact styles is if you don't train, you're gonna get your shit pushed in during the next sparring session, which is
Yep.
by the way every week.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Same as my place.
Would you like to get your shit pushed in every week? Probably not. So because of that, you're either going to quit or you're going to take the hint and you're going to start training.
Yeah, it's tough where it doesn't even really have to be a rival. The problem I was running into though was because, you can't force someone to be as good as you are. You can be the best teacher in the world, but you can't force someone to be invested if they don't want to be invested. And so with these new teenagers who I was with a lot of the times, they'd be throwing out forms and stuff like that, just really slow, really lackadaisy, not taking it seriously. And you can't practice throwing or sparring against somebody who's basically half your age who isn't taking it seriously, because you look terrible. Like if you throw seriously at them, that's a problem at that point, because they are not prepared to defend themselves.
Is it though? No, I think that's a skill issue. No, you get clipped by that. That's a you problem.
Oh sure, but there's a level of decorum that's supposed put on me as somebody who is twice their age.
I don't give a fuck.
No, I get it and I respect it, but at this place, and here's the thing, right? This place was very, if it was adult oriented, absolutely. But because this place was such a community place and like primarily kids and teenagers and stuff like that, with the adults who stay there for like 20 years being the only adults, it made sense. It's like, yeah, okay, it's a little more focused towards the kids. I get that. But it still sucks for me.
I'm not telling you to kick kids, but then again, if it's someone who's like 16 and he's developing a shit-eating attitude, like you can pressure test him a little bit.
I usually try and
Like
go from positive reinforcement.
listen, it's kind of positive reinforcement. See, if you don't keep about yourself, you're gonna get the wind kicked out of you. Very, very
Yeah,
gently, never produce permanent
of
injury.
course, of course. But yeah, it's it was a fun time.
Yeah, the methodology is you make it sting and you make them remember it.
Yeah, yeah. But other than that, I've done judo and jujitsu as well, for quite a few years.
Mm,
So that was the more hardcore stuff in that period of time. But yeah, the
yeah.
same sort of deal though, very Americanized. Like our sensei in that was like a paratrooper during the Panama War. Like
Nice.
that sort of energy was brought to our judo and jujitsu classes. So it was fun. It was fun though.
I mean, listen, judo taught by people who have actually had at the very least training or the opportunity to beat someone's skull in is usually more applicable and is better learning.
Yeah. You ever mess around with the military at all?
No, so I am a complete civilian. I know like people that have trained me have confirmed kill counts,
Hmm.
but I've stayed on the civilian side of things pretty much permanently. I've never had a detour, or I've never had a point in my life or career where detouring into the military would have been a more productive use of my time.
Yeah, yeah. No, I feel that. I considered it. I dabbled. I considered it. I trained a little bit, but I never did it.
So I have great respect for people who have actually signed up and did it, especially people who have done so being motivated by things outside of the material incentive of it,
Oh
especially
yeah.
people who have signed, yeah, like I know people who have signed on in the aftermath of 9/11 specifically because they felt the call to protect the nation's interests, and I respect that. I was too young to be in the initial wave of the global war on terror,
Hmm.
and later on, like any hot conflicts that have arisen when I was in of the appropriate age, those would have been on the IDF side, and they would still require me to, essentially put my career on pause and then move to Israel, which is, it's a nice place most of the time of the year, but then again, I'm not a fan of, having my income taxed globally by two different countries.
Yeah, that's a rough proposition. But
Yeah.
I did want to talk about transitioning a little bit. I wanted to talk about some
Mm.
VTubing stuff.
Yeah, we do that here
We do that here
sometimes.
sometimes. So here's my question to you, Kuramaru. So
Yeah.
what made you be a VTuber? How long have you been doing it? What are your goals? Like where are you coming from with this?
Oh, my only reasoning is OPSEC. I uh I would prefer to not use my actual appearance or identity for well, for any content creation,
Hmm.
regardless of like any opinions that may be attached to it or those that I very vocally spread. Like it's it's the secret identity paradox for like, what you would see in comic books.
Yeah.
I'm in a situation where my outside life is kayfabe, and VTubing is where I come to have no filter.
I get that. I get that. It's, I really like the whole secret identity part of VTubing. That's like one of the most fun parts, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a very healthy, the rare healthy carryover from idol culture.
Yeah, yeah, rare indeed, but yeah, we can appreciate what it is. I consider myself a
Hmm.
pretty traditional VTuber in the sense of like, I'm trying to do the idol journey, going to be singing, dancing, doing a bunch of different variety types of content and stuff like that. I was just, I've talked about it before, but I'm inspired by new ideas and I'm inspired by new industries, especially where it's like something that we haven't done before that's has a bunch of room to grow and a bunch of crazy things are going to happen because there are no rules yet. And everyone who's in it's a pioneer who's making the rules. Like that sort of stuff's really appealing to me. And I always looked up to anime characters as a kid, as opposed to real people because they were like more perfect. You know what I mean? Like they didn't have like human flaws that you would see here and there.
Well, yeah,
So
they're characters.
exactly. And so that idea of a character as like a shining ideal was always very appealing to me.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. You know what? For there being no rules, I feel like VTubing has sort of ossified with certain internal norms now.
Hmm.
In one part because, well, first of all, corporate VTubing has definitely ossified, and it's now a very crystallized product, and
Sure
there's an
is.
understood expectation and an understood niche for it. Indie VTubing, since it undeniably exists downstream from corporate VTubing and takes a lot of its beats from corporate VTubing, I also think has certain norms set internally, and those may be also different between different communities. But there's definitely an English language swath of VTubers, and the VTubers are now so mainstream and so numerous that we're now beginning to stratify more into dedicated niches. Like
Yeah.
if maybe 5 years ago it would have just been blanket VTubers and then just every VTuber does their own thing. Now it's okay, so these are like gaming VTubers and these are crafting VTubers and these are gun VTubers or whatever you have there. So we're being broken up into genres now because VTubers are normalized and numerous enough. So we're essentially supplanting. We are the new normal of streaming. Essentially, we're no longer exotics. Essentially,
Oh, totally. Yeah. Like you don't get like a buff from being a VTuber like it was 2020, you know what I mean? But
yeah.
I think like what I mean kind of is despite all that, like I agree completely. Like we are kind of turning into niches and stuff and there's different types and different, regions and stuff like that. But even that being said, it is still just like kind of how gaming is, and I was very interested in gaming for
Hmm.
this reason in the past. It's such a new industry that what it looks like now is not what it's going to look like 5 years from now. And I do think
Yeah.
that VTubing is kind of like the forefront of something that might turn into the biggest form of entertainment. It might be that avatars are the future, behind virtual characters and stuff like that. And we might be the pioneers. And that's incredibly exciting to me because I really like, I'm a believer in the medium, I guess I would say. Like I'm a dyed in the wool
Mm.
believer in VTubing from the very
Hmm.
conception. I was a Kizuna Ai fan back in like 2016, 2017. So
Same.
so for me, it's like, yep, I am here. I am here for it.
I have witnessed the rise and fall of Kizuna Ai, and
Yeah.
boy is that IP in a sad state. It's sad that it's become an IP as opposed to a person.
Yeah, yeah. They broke the one rule we maybe had.
Yeah. Do you know of the god awful anime? I think Sony owns her likeness now, so they've made the god awful anime allegedly about VTubers called Kizuna.
Oh no.
It is horrendous. I caught several episodes of it when I was in Japan, just flicking through channels. It is very, very bad.
Oh
It is
man.
basically it is basically an idol anime made by Gen Xers who don't understand what VTubers are. So all of the VTuber elements are shoehorned extremely poorly,
That's awesome. Love
and
that.
there's no spectacle quite like watching a big pile of Sony money going up into flames.
They do it pretty often, actually, you know?
Yeah. And the funny thing is they have those little intermissions that I don't know why, but they have those like out of character for fourth wall breaking intermissions where they use extremely outdated 3D full body tracking. And my theory is that they're probably just using Kizuna Ai's old stack with without even updating it whatsoever.
Oh no. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised. Oh man. It is crazy though how like the probably obviously, you know, there's arguments that there were VTubers as early as 2013, but you know, arguably the first true dyed VTuber. It's crazy how that was the one that they tried to actually make different people behind the voice, where ever since then it's like that is
Yeah.
the one big no-no, and the first big one is the only one who had ever tried that really.
Well, yeah, she was the test bed for a lot of concepts, and they I get the train of thought that was behind that, and that is usually what happens when sort of a property becomes a business property and you have people who are somewhat detached from its original purpose trying to run it as a business.
Yeah.
Which was, yeah, was it Kizuna Gaming or something like that? Like the secondary character slash channel.
All right, and then it ended up there were like five of them in the end. There were five different personalities.
I honestly stopped paying attention at that point
Same.
because the channel was just run like your average YouTube cancer channel that tries to upload almost daily, and it's all inane slop,
Yep.
and so I just checked out entirely.
Plus, VTubers existed then.
VTubers existed then. There were some very good indie VTubers, mostly Japanese VTubers. Some of them were English language. Like I believe Moemi popped up at about that time. That entire clique of indie
Hmm.
VTubers. If my memory serves me correctly, although there are people who point to some more obscure lore, but I think that if it was not anywhere to be found in more or less public circles, it doesn't exist because if something is very niche, it's questionable if it has any kind of influence on mainline media.
Yeah, there was like the four emperors, wasn't there? The four emperors of VTubing was the concept back then.
Interesting. I've not heard of that. Please explain.
It was the idea. I think it was only made after the fact, right? So it was something. Hold on, let me look up the exact ones. Four emperors of VTubing, and then I'll pull it up and talk about it. Where is it? Four emperors. Four emperors. Oh, I can't find it. Darn.
No.
No, I
It's
saw a great roundup and stuff like that, but I'll explain.
It
Yeah.
sounds, yeah, yeah. It sounds like the most VTuber lore thing ever.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, Four Heavenly Kings. Here we go. I found it. Okay. So, I think it was originally a Japanese idea, but the idea was like these were like the four, and it was only after the fact. But like the four progenitors and the four big main VTubers of that early era before Hololive, before Niji, before that, and they were called like the Four Heavenly Kings, and it was Kizuna
Hmm.
Ai, Kaguya Luna, Mirai Akari, and Noja Lolly were like the four
Oh,
Heavenly Kings.
I forgot about Mirai Akari entirely.
Yeah.
I forgot she existed, even though I watched some of her content that they had collabs and whatnot. Interesting. Yeah, that checks out.
Yep. I just love that where it's like the 13 Knights of Sora from like Hololive lore.
Yeah,
But it's the original four heavenly kings of VTubing. I
yeah.
love stuff like that. Like when we get into one of my favorite things actually is I really like archiving stories. And so for me,
Mm.
one of the most interesting things like about video games, for example, is console generations and the companies that competed during those times. Same thing for VTubing. The generations of VTubing and who's competing against each other during those times is incredibly fascinating for me. So all that like history roundup stuff is like, chef's kiss.
Yeah, yeah, it's very important to catalog that and gives you perspective on what's happening. One thing that you've mentioned, which I think is already happening, like you've said that VTubing is the future of entertainment. I think to a very large extent, at least Japanese companies have realized that VTubers are the better version of idols.
Yeah.
Because Hololive is essentially that. They're an idol agency that just uses VTubers as the talent and they are devoid of a lot of the issues that you would have with an idol group, because the longevity of the idol group is usually limited by either the members implicating themselves in a loud and public scandal, or them just aging out of the profession,
Yeah.
because there is a very well understood cutoff for an idol's lifetime where she is expected to move on to a different, still media adjacent, but a different career. You can't be an idol for forever.
Right.
Even you can't be an idol for 10 years basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
And VTubers, yeah, VTubers don't age because they have a VA. The changes in the changes in a VA's voice are significantly less apparent than they would be on a person's face. And because the VTuber only exists as long as the model is actually on screen, you're not going to have a moment of, I don't know, her being spotted with a boyfriend in a cafe and all of the unicorns committing a terror act.
No, absolutely. Like it's really just like you said, a better form of it. And that age thing in particular
Yeah.
is one thing that attracted me to it, because I was like, well, I can kind of, obviously not, because it's actually ironic how it happened. But I went into VTubing originally with one of the ideas being like, oh, I can stay young forever, right? Through my model, through me being Alpin and me, being Alpin.
Mm.
But then ironically enough, it turned out that the whole idea nowadays of, like, 30 is in demand and stuff, ironically made it so that aging as a VTuber turned out to be a not bad idea. And I find it
Yeah,
ironic now, but I guess I'm doing that too.
it's kind of the same for corporate VTubers as well. Like, for example, Hosho Marin is very publicly over the age of 30.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter because the model is still pretty, and it means that the person behind the model actually has some lived experience and is actually less likely to throw a random bitch fit.
Yeah. Yeah. No, with, oftentimes, right? I don't want to say all the time, but in many cases with age comes maturity. And so it's
Yeah.
more stable, and you get like for a lot of people, I get it, right? It's the appeal of, you still have the anime character, but they're now like, they're older.
Exactly.
So that's fun. That's fun. I will say I'm very fortunate because I'm on the cusp myself. And I've talked about this, but in this lifetime and in this incarnation as Alpin, I'm 29, which means my Oji-san 30th birthday is coming up. And yeah, I'm very coincidentally, the age of 30 is suddenly in demand. I couldn't ask for better fortunes.
Yeah, yeah, very much a growth market.
So never thought so. I wonder if it has something to do too with the fact that, like, as a whole, like, I don't know, it feels like VTuber fans often are older, like slightly older, than like just normal like anime fans these days and stuff like that. And I wonder if it's something with that too, where it's not so much that like suddenly people are appreciating the age of 30 so much as a lot of the viewers are closer to the age of 30 or approaching the age of 30.
I think a lot of anime fans are approaching their 40s.
Yeah, that's
Anime
true.
fans, yeah, a lot of millennials are just essentially anime fans that never grew out of the hobby, and millennials are infamously a generation that clings on to their childhood hobbies and directs a lot of their expendable income into it. So
Guilty.
I think the audience, both for anime and for VTubers by extension, is just an older cohort, albeit still somewhat diluted by younger people. There are a lot of Zoomers in the VTubing space, even
Yeah.
on the VTubing side.
Absolutely. It
Yeah.
is funny. I'm used to interacting with people a lot younger than me because I used to be a teacher. I worked with kids. And I also used to, like, when I was kind of in tune with my college group for a very long time, and I worked in clubs and stuff like that. So it wouldn't be uncommon to have someone 8 years younger than me who I was friendly with, because I was like already graduated but still associated with the club, and they were new into the club, and we'd see each other at events and stuff. So I'm kind of used to that, but it is funny sometimes when you talk to another VTuber and learn that they are 10 years younger than you.
See, that's an experience that's entirely foreign to me because throughout most of my life I was surrounded by people who are like 10 years my senior,
Hmm.
including including teaching people who are significantly older than myself. Because while I was in an instructor position in my dojo, teaching Iaido and Jujitsu, it just so happened then that the core of the dojo were like adult people who are like significantly older than myself.
Mm.
And because of that, that was my social circle, people who are at the very least 40 years old, and that informed a lot of my sensibilities and formed a lot of my habits for interacting with other people, and then I interact with someone who's like 10 years younger than me, and sometimes I am placed in a stupor by a lot of their sensibilities.
Yeah, it's actually funny because I bet if an outsider looked at the two of us, they would say that I seem like I act younger and you probably seem like you act older. And that's probably a part in portion because, like you said, you were around older people and I was around a lot of younger people for like throughout most of my life. You know what I mean? I wonder if that's probably a big part of it.
There is a saying that goes essentially along the lines of you are the average of the five people closest to you, or the five people that you spend the most time with.
Hmm.
While a gross oversimplification, I think there is still some truth to the saying.
Yeah, yeah, totally. But yeah, it's just it's a magical world. It's a magical world, and I'm really happy to be VTubing and stuff like that. And it's probably going to be a long haul thing for me. Like it's probably going to be a long. I'll be here a while. You know what I mean? So I think
It's definitely fun.
yeah, yeah. I think it's the end result for me. I would say I think it's my final destination.
Oh, there you go. As long as you're having fun. I enjoy it as a non-committal hobby. Like
Yeah.
I don't have to be tied to a specific structure because I have way too many structured hobbies. Like I have things where I have certain set obligations and whatnot, and hierarchies where I'm built into. And VTubing is a lot of do anything that you want within certain, reasonable boundaries.
Yeah.
And it gives me a reason to learn stuff. Like it gave me a reason to learn to use Blender to do specific things. It gave me a reason to become a little bit better engrossed in content creation, just understanding that there's audience engagement, and like whenever you're creating content, you're not creating it for the sake of making content. There's supposed to be a value proposition and whatnot.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think the big thing that like drew me to it and why I feel like it is kind of like the end result is I've been very public about the fact that this is not my first rodeo and I've done content creation in past lives before. And I've been doing it for quite a while. This is my 7th year of content creation. And
Nice.
I've, all the other things I've done, I've had various projects, some lasting many years, some shorter. But all the things I've done were always one thing. It was always, I do this type of content, I do this type of thing. And so what's been really attractive about VTubing is it's somewhere where I can do whatever I want, like you said, where it's like I can do, as a VTuber, it's acceptable and expected even to be like, I'm going to play games, but I'm also going to do karaoke, but I'm also going to draw, but I'm also going to learn Japanese, but I'm also going to dance if I want, and I can lift. Like I can really week to week do whatever I want. And that's super refreshing to me as somebody who's like done the same thing over and over and over again for years in a different form of content creation. You know what I mean?
I think that has to do like the jack of all trades aspect of VTubing is also derived from the idol culture of it.
Yeah, totally,
Because
totally.
you would typically see that in idols, because idols are supposed to be multi-talented. They're supposed to sing, dance, and then they're also going to have their one thing that they do. And gaming is, I think, a good backdrop, but when applied correctly, like there's a danger in centering your content around gaming, at the very least for me, because I like very slow, monotonous games that some people may call autistic, not entirely incorrectly. But I understand that it's extremely drab viewing to watch me sort my inventory for the better part of 3 hours. I get that this is not exactly content. So it also skews the things that I would normally do. Like I can easily burn 3 hours playing Ready or Not, kicking down doors in Los Afghanistan, but I get how maybe that's not exactly content for a 3 hour stream, especially since I have to be locked in so much that I can't also yap convincingly or entertainingly in the process, and I'm going to just default to the jokes about stop moving and the mag dumping.
Right, right. I think like the people who, it's a fairly saturated space, both streaming and VTubing these days. And I think the people
Especially
who,
the gaming part of it.
yeah, what I was going to say is like people who are already huge, right, can kind of get away with playing whatever and they will have
Yeah.
a big audience. But if you're doing so, if it's just a hobby, you don't have to worry about that at all. You stream whatever you want. But if you have like a growth mindset and you're looking from an audience perspective, it's tough, yeah, to be like, I'm going to just play this game. And especially for me, like one of the reasons why I don't center myself around gaming content is I recognize the fact that I am not skilled at games. I like them.
Yeah.
I like a wide variety of them, but I'm not skilled in any particular game. And because of that, it's like I'm not showing high skill content. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
especially like my favorite series of all time, my favorite game series of all time, I would never stream it. I love the Trails series, like Trails in the Sky, Trails
Mm.
of Cold Steel. And Trails is like the most anti-content game ever in terms of streaming. It's a 60-hour JRPG, 13 games in story-wise, and it's just a bunch of like, dialogue and turn-based combat and stuff. It would be the worst thing ever to stream. I would never do it, but it's my favorite game series ever.
Yeah, yeah, there's definitely a cutoff for it. Like,
Yeah.
I fashion myself as knowing stuff about Tekken, at the very least based on my legacy knowledge. So I am at the very least able to break down game systems and try to convert that into content, but at the same time, even that is better suited for YouTube content as opposed to me trying to do that on stream because it's just not engaging enough for a live stream audience.
Yeah, yeah.
The katana polishing antics, those are fun as a one-off thing, but probably also not something that I would like to do consistently, just because there's not a lot of productive work that can be done there if you just turn that into a staple. Surprisingly enough, me just doing flat out Zatsus have been it's both been fun for me because I'm gonna be watching the same YouTube videos I would have been watching anyway. But at the same time, I like engaging with people, and I like it when people bring new ideas, and they're not scared to discuss those ideas in my chat room. That is why I deliberately advertise and maintain my no bans for opinions rule.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's great that there are spaces to do that sort of thing. You know what I mean? Like, I really respect that. Again, like my content obviously is a little bit different and it's a little more, a everything, right? A
Yeah.
religious, a political, all that stuff. But I respect the hell out of having a
Mm.
space to do that sort of thing, And I think that like, oh boy, I have like when I stream, I have two main rules. So my
Mm.
two main rules, and I'm thinking you guys really never see this side, but I'm always thinking from an audience perspective when I do a stream. So when I'm sitting and planning my schedule for the week, I never think first, oh, what do I want to play? I think first, what would be entertaining and valuable for other people to see? And so, like, I'm very cautious about what I pick and what I do. But then my second rule comes into play where I still have to have fun. So I'm very much on the side of do a lot of prep work, take your overlay really seriously, make sure your audio levels are balanced, your mic sounds good, all this really hardcore stuff, right? Get a high quality,
Mm.
I mean, not the highest quality. My Live 2D, I'm very proud of it and I'm happy for the price. Just make sure everything's dialed in before you go, but once you hit that live button, you have fun. That's my rule is like, yeah, you start having fun.
Don't talk yourself down. I am aware of people who have either comparable or lower quality Live 2Ds, and they've paid in excess of $300 for them. Many such cases.
Yep,
For
yep.
some reason, a lot of big VTubers have suddenly downgraded the quality of their model for no apparent reason, and I am honestly I'm just stunted as to why would they do that? But
Yeah.
we're not gonna point fingers here. I think you've done very well for yourself for stretching your dollar very far and getting good results out of that.
Yeah, yeah. To talk about that real quick to anyone listening, hey, if you're a PNG tuber or if you're getting into VTubing and you want a live 2D, please do a trusted. I can even tell you if you want. It was Waffle Caramel on Etsy, $170 all in from design to rigging, and it was delivered in 3 weeks.
Yeah, there you
Yeah,
go.
you're set. That's all you need.
That's way below the market right now. I don't do this anymore, but I would usually proliferate the idea of if you're just starting out, if you're like even not even a two view, don't invest money into assets. Like and the logic here is it's twofold. First of all, stop inflating the market. Stop feeding the artists. Their time is like I have artists at the very least positive acquaintance artists. I'm not gonna go as far as say that we're friends just because we don't interact enough. I have artistically inclined friends. Like I'm friends with Gunpei, and I don't know if she counts as an artist. I know that she draws when she's
Yeah,
effortful
yeah.
about it.
I mean, I commissioned
But
her, so she
generally,
counts as an artist as far as I'm concerned.
yeah. Oh, there you go. She got paid for art, therefore she's an artist. But my general attitude is stop feeding the artists. Stop gratifying the inflated pricing that a lot of the artists will give you. It's okay to commission friends. It's okay to support your friends, but don't contribute to the issue of artists charging exorbitant prices because they have grown to be too self-important. Deflate their fucking ego. That's the first component
Brutal.
of it. And the second component of it, you aspire to be a content creator. Sit the fuck down and create some content instead of just buying a thing that's pre-made for you. Figure out what your stack even looks like. Figure out how the things that you intend to use work. Like, oh, I want an overlay. Well, great. Sit down and figure out what is the structure of an overlay. I didn't want an overlay. I don't want to fuck with an overlay. I don't want to figure out how to combine things within a scene. So I just created a 3D environment and I use that instead of an overlay.
Yeah, I think my two thoughts, like, you know, I get where you're coming from, absolutely, with the artist thing. I do disagree a good bit just because, like, you know, here's the thing. I'm not artistically inclined. And so to me, art is magic. At least in
Same.
my mind, it's like when I see someone do art, I'm like, bro, I'll pay you whatever because that's amazing and I can't do it. And I do think, though, there is a fair, like, hourly rate type situation. You know, if somebody's charging
Exactly.
like $1,300 for something that's going to take them 10 hours, you know, it's like that's a little much. That's a little much.
Exactly. That's what I said a moment ago. Like
Yeah.
your time is definitely not worth that.
But if people pay it, I guess, you know, if people feel like it's
If
worth it and they are paying it, then
Oh, that's the invisible hand of the
I
market.
guess
But
so.
then again, I am well positioned to tilt it in one way or the other.
True, true.
And again, like I don't think that everything warrants the involvement of an artist. First of all, it's okay to have some things that are scuff up to a certain point. If
Mhm.
you're like about to breach 3 view, yeah, sure. At this point, you're definitely the cash flows are such that it would warrant that you invest some of it back into your production qualities. I understand that. That is a reasonable business decision at that point. The math works. That's fine. And if you're on the smaller end, it's okay to have certain elements of scuff. I say that as someone who has allowed a great degree of scuff in my existing model, or even in this room that we're in, for
A
example.
beautiful room, by the way.
But some of these things, they don't warrant me, for example, involving an artist, or I've allowed some of these things to just grow organically. Like the vase behind you is something that I slapdash together based on an artwork that Digby drew.
Oh, a nice vase,
Because
though.
that's yeah, that's over him. That's him shooting an IRS agent over a bag of taxes.
I didn't
Um,
even realize that. um,
or for example, yeah, or the whatchamacallit, god damn it. I
that
don't
is
come the
Digby.
Killdozer.
Oh,
Yeah, the
I was gonna
Killdozer.
ask earlier if that was Killdozer.
That is a Japanified Killdozer. So,
Whoa.
so a lot of that elements of that image are AI gen.
Hmm.
Why? Because, well, I'm not going to pay anyone for a throwaway asset like that. Like if someone wants to paint this for me, yeah, sure, I'll take it as a gift and I'll credit them to hell and back. Or like the artwork that's currently sitting behind me, I'll just have an actual artwork that exists in reality, and I'll refer to that artist. This specifically is a piece by Yamaguchi Yuji, excuse me, Moriguchi Yuji.
Hmm.
It's the same artist that made the Samsara wheel that I have tattooed on my forearm. But that's like a specific artist that I want to have an homage towards.
Yeah, yeah.
But I'm not going to commission anyone for a throwaway piece of art like the Killdozer over there. I would rather AI gen elements of it and then slap my calligraphy on it and stylize that and like assemble a thing that I like out of these generic elements.
Hmm.
But I'll essentially end up in a place where it's low cost, it's no cost for me. And like if I have to involve a person, I would have to pay them for their time. And I will not I don't want to put them in a situation where I underpay for their time because it's just not an asset I value.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that part of the perspective. Absolutely. Because like I've been in the same thing. Like when I was getting started where I was like, I want this little thing, but it's not that big of a deal. And like, I don't want to,
Mm,
like, I'd much rather not have it than spend a lot of money on it. So like, if I can't find it for $5, I'm just not going to have it, kind of situation. You know what I mean?
exactly.
But what I would
Yeah.
recommend, and my perspective coming into VTubing was a little bit different because I came in with like a set goal. I came in with an idea of like, I am going to try my best to grow. I'm going to try my best to make good content that's audience like entertainment focused, right? It's educational
Mm,
with the fitness stuff, but I had a goal coming in, and I had a experience as content creator for many, many years. So for me, what I would say, like advice wise, is it made sense for me not to have scuff, I guess I would say. So for somebody, I would say for somebody starting off, I would recommend a lot of pre-made stuff because like I mean, a lot of my stuff's pre-made stuff that I just bought. Like my stinger animation is like a $5
mm,
transition animation from Fiverr. I have a lot of like
mm.
really cheap Etsy and Fiverr stuff on my stream, but when you put it all together, it looks good and it's pre-made stuff. But I think that like for a beginner, if you're new to content creation, you should just start as soon as you can to start gaining XP because it's very, very unlikely the first thing you ever do, especially these days with how saturated things are, it's very unlikely the first thing you ever do will pop off if that's your goal, right? If your goal is to grow, it's very unlikely as a new person to content creating. So just gain some XP, do what it takes, start with whatever you have, just start grinding, right? If you're somebody like me who had a lot of experience and stuff like that, and you know kind of what you're doing going into it, I think then it made sense for me to get a bunch of assets, have this high quality thing, because I wanted to attract as many eyes as I could on me at the very, very beginning to kind of show myself, right? To debut myself, as we say with VTubers and stuff like that. Because I'm like, I
Mm.
know what I'm doing. And I know that if I expose myself to as many people as possible, like my skill level's up to snuff and my idea and my concept is up to snuff enough that I'll retain some people. So it made sense for me to try and shoot for like a bigger opening, a bigger debut because I had that experience. It was worth the investment for me. So if you're in that situation, maybe.
Listen, but at the same time, you also didn't invest like multiple thousands of dollars into a stack
Oh
for a
no,
brand new streaming channel. Exactly.
no.
So you still kept it very, very much low cost, and you've intelligently leveraged the assets that you've got.
Yes.
Like I say I made the model from scratch, but I've repurposed a lot of elements that I found elsewhere. Like for example, my texture skin was something that I bought off of Booth with a commercial license, and then I've altered it significantly that yeah, it's no longer the original skin. It's like the elements that comprise the model are not the same. They're materially different.
Mhm.
But I'm not going to like completely penny pinch and try to do everything from scratch. I admire people who try to do that.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, I'm not going to invest into that. Although I have to throw some shade and say that I maintain that Live 2D is still inherently scuff. It is an inferior model technology. It was made as a resource conservation method. It is there to create an illusion of 3D. Just look at the efforts that they need to go through to mimic a portion of my power.
Well, you know what? I don't disagree, but it has one benefit. It has one benefit that I want to push forward here. And the thing is, and the reason
Okay.
why I think people do it, right, is VTubing is derived from anime culture, right? And
Okay.
anime culture has a problem with 3D generally. And so live 2D looks more like anime than 3D does.
Mm,
And because of that,
debatable. Debatable. You can design a 3D model with correct shading that it will still look like anime. Just look at
you can.
G-Clef's model.
No, you absolutely
I
can and
was
stuff, but
I
it's
was
harder.
under the impression so listen, I was under the impression for the longest time I thought the G-Clef's model was a live 2D just because of how well it was, like the materials and the shading and the colors. He nailed it so right, and then he had that opacity element to it, and
Mhm.
it fooled me fucking completely because he had those correctly selected flattened colors with the filters that he had on. I was fully convinced that is a 2D image.
Yeah, and I mean like it's definitely at a point now where you can absolutely do that. And there's some really skillful people, right? Like we even have 3D anime now that even I'll admit isn't that terrible. I had a problem.
Listen, Kengan Ashura it just doesn't work if it's not 3D. With the fight choreography being as involved as it is, it had to be 3D.
Yeah, the problem I was coming from personally, like I never liked 3D anime. And the reason why was anime runs at 24 frames per second generally. And my eye
Hmm.
coming from the gaming world, where I did things I'm not disclosing, but I might have, I've said it. It's fine. I worked in the game industry before, right? And
You're a fucking Counter-Strike sweat, aren't you?
no. I worked in the gaming industry a little bit, and
Yeah.
looking at things with like an eye for 60 FPS, an eye for 120 FPS, and stuff like that, and then seeing 3D moving in 24 felt wrong to me because it felt
See,
like that was a
there's a
mistake.
difference. Listen. There's a difference. There's a way to do it extremely poorly. And frame rates are a component of that. It's a question of how you port the 3D graphics into it.
Yeah,
For
yeah,
example, Kengan Ashura works very well in 3D because the 3D graphics are, first of all, not the only thing there. They have intermissions of 2D graphics, and the 3D graphics are only used when you need to show complex motor movements, such as the fighting interactions. That's where the 3D comes out. That's where it shines, and it's also well adapted to the frame rate of the picture. At the same time, you another example would be Altered Carbon, the Netflix anime, not to be confused with the series. I didn't
hmm
really care for the series, but the anime was pretty good. I mean, I think I rewatched it twice just because it's an enjoyable throwaway flick. On the contrary, you have the example of the Netflix Ghost in the Shell show, which was dog shit. It was just tragically bad, starting from the writing, and yes, including the extremely poor use of 3D, because the 3D ran at like 10 frames a second. Like you could see the fucking scuff in the 3D animations.
yeah. I just
Like it hurt, it was physically painful to watch it, and then you also have the bad story writing that was written by a fucking Bernie bro, and it just crumbles to fucking pieces.
Yeah, I just had a problem like seeing that transition to 3D with like 24 FPS hurt me because I was so used to seeing it faster.
Mm,
A good example being like
mm,
even things as well made, admittedly, from my perspective, as like the recent Dragon Ball Super Broly movie. When Broly
mm.
and Gogeta and stuff like that are fighting in 2D, I'm like, yay! And then when you see those shots for 3D, I'm like, oh no. I still pick up on it and I
Ah,
still don't like it.
I would need to watch that because I have I'll be real, I have managed to watch only 3 episodes of Dragon Ball, and that is it. I could not force myself to watch more. I recognize the foundational aspect of Dragon Ball. I know the great contribution that Dragon Ball was to anime and to manga, but the tropes that Dragon Ball established have been done to death and back by absolutely everyone that it makes the show proper, especially if you like start with Dragon Ball Z, completely unwatchable. I cannot. I just can't.
Yeah, sorry, I was brainwashed. I was brainwashed from when I was like 5. I'm way in the sauce with DBZ.
It's not even it's not a question of that. You were exposed to those tropes through DBZ. Like
Exactly.
you were essentially exposed to them in the intended order. Like, oh, this is DBZ. It's establishing
Right.
that muscular men screaming very loudly and punching each other very hard is cool, and here's the story progression. And when it's novel, it works. But when you've seen those same tropes played out 10,000 times, and then you come back to them being played through as if it's the first time ever, because it is the first time ever they were written, but you're seeing it for the fifth or sixth or 50th time, you just can't take it seriously.
Oh yeah, I get that perspective. I mean, like you said, I had the normal progression, but I admit,
Yeah.
most series that came after did those a lot better. Like the whole power scaling thing in Dragon Ball isn't good. Power scaling and
Mhm.
how certain members of like the main cast just get kind of phased out because they can't do anything anymore. Like that's not a good way to
Yeah.
handle that. Series handle that way better nowadays. But yeah, it is just like the originator and the nostalgia factor, but also just like it becomes a core of your person when you watch it when you're young.
So it needs to be understood that these tropes were written before a lot of the best practices were established and before a lot of these tropes were overused. It's very unfair to judge DBZ through the lens of a modern anime viewer.
Yeah, yeah, no, totally. I mean, even things that were obviously not contemporary of it, but still older anime, like when One Piece started, right? One thing that One
Mm.
Piece did a lot better than Dragon Ball Z is it instead of having all the characters stand around and watch a fight, One Piece would give fights to everyone. Every one of the main cast would
Yeah.
have a fight or something to go through, and it would cut between them all. And it was like, yeah, that was just kind of an upgrade rather than having them watch and
Mm.
commentate the fight that we don't need, you know? But back to kind of what we were talking about before, yeah, with like the starting off at VTubing and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, I think for me,
Mm.
it made sense to try and make a big starting push just to get as much eyes on, because I'm like, okay, I've done this before. The more eyes on I can get, kind of like the better. But yeah, I think
Mm.
anyone who doesn't have a lot of experience with content creation, you should probably just kind of like go for it. You know, you don't have to worry
Yeah.
about spending $1,000. I did hit the $1,000 spent mark like right last week, I want to say, but my
Mm.
overlays. So I have this problem where I can't stand waiting very long for things. And so
Mm.
like my overlays cost twice the amount that my model did, because I went for a rush order, because I didn't know if I was going to use overlays, and I was like, no, I want them, and I wanted them animated, and I wanted on rush order. So I paid extra. But yeah, it was, for me, it was like I just hit the $1,000 put in mark into VTubing, but you do not need to do that. I could have done it for way cheaper if I cut a lot of that stuff out. You could get started with VTubing literally with like $15 or $5 and commission a PNG, you know?
So you could get started in VTubing for free.
True.
It just invest some time into building a tasteful Vroid, because Vroids are free
Hmm.
and the streaming software is also free. And there you go. You don't
Yep.
even need to confine yourself to being a Vroid, or rather a PNG. Like, the Vroid shit is free, and a lot of the booth assets are also free. It's a question of your creativity and you being able to shape that into a character that's workable.
Yeah. And I do think that one other thing too I'd bring on top of all that is I don't know, just a recommendation from me is like, do a lot of, like you talked about with like learning Blender and stuff, right? Do your
Mm,
research and really be ready for that first time you hit live. I know a lot of people like to say just go live, and in concept philosophically speaking, I agree with that, which is like just get started, but you should have a standard of quality, I think, which is like,
yes.
don't plug in your mic for the first time when you go live, you know? Test
Yeah.
recordings. Does your mic sound good? Is it working? How is your
Hmm.
audio? How's the audio balance? Do you sound good versus your game? Please test all of that before you actually hit live for the first time, because anyone who does check that first stream will take notice of that and maybe even leave right away. And so it's like, just
Yeah.
put a little effort into like preparing yourself for that first stream and that first series of streams. Don't just go live with absolutely no prep.
Yeah, I co-sign that entirely. If you're going to do a thing, do the thing well. The thing
Yeah.
that I rally against is just delegating your creative process entirely to someone else. Like, don't go to an artist and tell him to, yeah, design a character for me. Here's $2,000 of not my money, because that's the only case in which you're going to do that. And then do the same for the fucking 3D model.
Mhm.
And there are artists that prey on people like that. Like, they'll charge you out the ass for something that they know you don't really have an understanding of or the capacity to use well.
Yeah.
I admire your very well executed launch, because you've networked correctly, you've pre-marketed correctly. I sort of materialized in obscurity and then just essentially kicked the door to Asp down and sort of imposed myself on the community. Uh, I sort of remedied that to a certain extent when I re-debuted this model. But yeah, I did fumble my launch, for lack of a better term.
Mhm.
And on top of that, I honestly admire your patience to do the content that I don't have the patience to do, in the form of being very granular with entry level knowledge regarding fitness, because a part of my positioning early on was, yeah, this isn't a device channel. The reason there's an Onii-san in my title is that I am the older Aniki that you go to and you ask about stuff, and just
Yeah.
me being able to draw from that well of experience of doing a lot of different shit.
Oh yeah, I got that vibe right
I'll
away.
be Yeah, I'll be able to advise you on certain things, including fitness, because that takes up a lot of my bandwidth. The
Yeah.
things that I won't do is try to go into a dialogue with someone who's going to hit me with, but it's hard. Well, tough shit. Life is hard. Wear a hat.
Yeah,
Like,
like I
oh,
said,
oh, this yeah, your advice isn't immediately actionable. Well, what can I tell you? Do more, suck less.
That's the thing. Again, I think it's like I said, the perspective maybe once again of coming from working with kids versus working with adults primarily,
Yeah.
where it's like I'm very used to leading people in who know nothing about something, and I understand that
Mm.
I get it. Where it's like me. I think about myself with art, right, or like myself with music, where I
Mm.
know so little, I don't even know what questions to ask. And then I realize, yeah,
Mm.
there are people like that with fitness, and so I have to just start at that beginning point and be like, "Yep, this is what a
It's
dumbbell is. This is what a squat is. This is what a calorie is. Even
So here's the thing. I don't mind starting from zero when I have to explain things.
Hmm?
Usually, I am of the opinion that, like, the further down I break things to their fundamental elements, the better, because it allows me to put together a cohesive piece of information that draws from certain reasons and then follows into certain sought results. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with explaining something from scratch. What I have no tolerance for is, but I don't want to,
Oh yeah,
because
yeah.
because if I hear but I don't want to, in when I used if I heard that in the context of my teaching, my response would be then get the fuck out.
Hmm.
Because I don't make a living doing this. I don't need you here. So either don't waste my time or get the fuck out.
Yeah, I mean, granted, I say that to some of my clients who do have that. They come from that perspective, and I'll talk with them
Yeah.
very honestly, like obviously politely about it. But somebody I have
Sure.
people who I have to drag to do the lifts. They don't want to do them, and they'll
Mm.
try and quit, and I have to drag them through them. And I tell them every time, I'm like, hey, listen, man, like if you're I kind of argue from their perspective of their wallet, where I'm like, dude,
Mhm.
if you're not going to put the effort in, and if you really don't want to do this, you're wasting your money, because you're not going to get anything out of this unless you try hard. So if you
Yeah.
really don't care, like, why are you here? Think about that, and that's the thing. I do
Mhm.
agree with that. Like, if somebody tells me they don't want to do something, or it's really really hard, like, I obviously, most of the times it's like just a joke, and I'm just like, all right, yeah, do it anyway. You can do it. I believe in you. And
Mhm.
I mean those things. But like, if someone legitimately, really deep down, is like, I don't want to do this anymore, then it's like, okay, you don't have to. I can't
Yeah.
force you to do something you don't want to do. Don't do it.
It's that, and also there's also, like, there is it's not a lawyer answer, but like, I understand that you have to be more diplomatic about certain positions, and I have the luxury of not being, but at the same time I just don't have the patience of being that way. Like, for
Yeah.
example, if you're being asked, like, what's a good protein source for someone who's vegan, and my answer is going to be not being vegan.
Yeah, right. Whereas my answer is be like, okay, if you're vegan, let me take your
Yeah, you're
conditional and say blah 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 blah
you're
blah blah blah.
yeah
Yeah.
you're accommodating, whereas my approach is you will be molded to the fucking grindstone that I have introduced to this equation, or you will be ground down to dust. Those are the only outcomes that can happen here.
My perspective always is like, if I can just help people get a little bit closer to their goal, right? Like, even if I'm talking to them and I understand, like, okay, yeah, maybe there are some limitations because of certain things they're doing or things like that. It's like, at least I can get you a little bit closer there, towards the healthy thing that you want to be in the end.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm also not opposed to that. I like seeing, even if someone is making small changes and they're productive changes for their lifestyle, I am also happy to see that. Like, I'm not going to demand that someone goes balls to the wall and just, I don't know, stops doing everything they're not supposed to. They're going to
Right,
go to
right.
bed at 10 p.m., especially since I don't do that.
Yeah.
And like, I don't expect someone to just dive into the lifestyle.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I don't have patience for things that I either know to be that I know to be incompatible with the results that people are asking for.
Totally, totally. But yeah, back to like with the VTubing thing, like when you mentioned like
Mm.
the networking and stuff, like when I started, like, yeah, I think actually this would be a pretty cool place to like talk about kind of like what I did and why I did it, and what I think works really well. And
Hmm.
obviously I was very lucky with the fact that like I had, like, it just so happened coincidentally there were insane raids like on my debut. Like, I obviously did
Mm.
not plan for that or anything like that. But my process was a pretty long one. So in the
See, I
past,
wouldn't
oh
say
yeah,
that those. See, I'm gonna interrupt you there real quick. I don't think your raids were random. Your raids were a direct product of you putting yourself into positive graces of members of the community that would have the viewership power to throw behind raids like that, which again, that's sort of the mirror image of what I did. I'm not going to say wrong, just because I never wanted to bounce off of different people in the community,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I did sort of come in swinging with a lot of people taking a pretty apprehensive stance towards me
Ah.
from the get-go.
Yeah, I wasn't around. I wouldn't have known.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just I mean, the reason I say lucky too is because like for example, like talking specifics, right? I got in the first raid I got my debut, No Sharko raided into me.
Mm.
And I saw No Sharko came in with 80 something people. And No Sharko
Mm.
usually does not have 80 something people. It was a complete coincidence that that day No Sharko happened to get a different raid that had all those people in it
Ah.
and had all that stuff, you know? So like that sort of luck, whereas
Mhm.
like, you know, it's I was incredibly fortunate in that regard. But to talk about like
Nice.
specifics, what I did was, so like I've talked about before, I'm a bit of like an archivist and I like studying up on stuff.
Mm.
So I was in the community, I was aware of the community, and I was reading everything 2 months before I even started. So all the way back in February, basically, I was understanding who everyone was. I was learning about them. I was
Mhm.
watching streams. I was just like basically learning everything I could about the community, how people like you know, like not like it's hard to describe because I don't mean this in like a manipulative way or anything like that. Just kind of like learning the social norms, you know, like I would if I was going to Japan, learning the social
Mhm.
norms of the place to not suddenly offend everyone when I showed up. And just like learning who everyone was and what the names were and so all that so I could like know who they were. And so I did all that, and then I was getting my assets. I asked a couple questions. I responded to some questions actually anonymously with stuff that I knew, so like audio related stuff because I had some experience with it before. And then you know about like 2 3 weeks beforehand, I made my social media, and then I started spending for those 2 3 weeks. I spent about 10 to 12 hours a day in everyone's streams, talking like
Mm.
all the time in every single person's streams.
Mhm.
I was drawing art of things that I thought were funny. If a funny event happened, because I had all the free time, I would draw artwork and I'd post it and stuff like that. And that was the sort of networking I was doing. So I was like, you know, making funny edits. I was talking to everyone in stream for like 2 whole weeks straight, like all day. And then it finally became time to debut.
Yeah, that's very impactful. Like you've ingratiated yourself with like key people in the community. So yeah, you've cast your wide net, you've made yourself known, so that is the correct play to do so. I, on the other hand, have fumbled that entire process, even when I was re-entering the community, because, well, first of all, the first time I got a more or less sort of sizable raid, my internet died.
Oh no.
Yes, you hate
That's,
to see it.
that's so bad.
I was getting in sort of good with a Tekken team with Team AYA,
Mhm.
and like the team captain Aya at the time. So I timed my stream so that it would be at the tail end of hers. So and she decided to raid me, and it was right after we had one of the two rare winters and the only two winters we've had in Texas for 50 years. So our infrastructure was in shambles, including a lot of the fiber optic cables being either damaged or somehow affected by like the shifting soils and whatnot.
Yeah.
So my internet would just randomly keep going out. And just as I am hit by like a 25-person raid as a one view,
Right, right.
my stream dies.
No.
Yeah.
I had a dream about that. I had a horror dream about that, like about a month ago. Had a I had a dream where like I was up in the middle of the night working on something on my like OBS, and I accidentally went
Mhm.
live, but I was really really tired, and it was just a black screen. And I got a raid of like 500 people, and I couldn't bring myself. Like I was like in my mind, I was like, okay, now I have to actually make it a stream. I need to get up, I need to wake up and make this a stream. But I could not bring myself to wake up. And then I got in 1,000-person raid, and I was like, oh, and I was like on a black screen, just like slumped in my chair, couldn't do anything. But yeah, and you know, I want to say too is like because I can already definitely foresee, and I'm sure this won't like absolutely, I won't, this won't dissuade anyone who wants to take it away, but I can see absolutely people getting the wrong idea from what I'm talking about. It's like, let me be straight about this. Like, I'm not, obviously this is only worth what you believe, but I'm a very genuine person. I'm a very upfront person. I watched people who I liked, and I networked with people who I liked and stuff like that. And I haven't not liked anyone. Like, so far at streams that I watched and stuff like that, I didn't not like anyone. So none of it was very like, I just say that to say, like, I didn't go in just being like, oh, you know, this person's big, I'm going to become their friend or anything like that. No, it was very much like, I like this person's stuff. I like what they stream. I think they're funny. So I want to become friends with them, right? It's as simple as that, basically. My mind is just like, they're cool and I want to be friends with them. And I just did that kind of over and over again as I found all the people who I thought were like wicked entertaining and wicked good and wicked cool. And I just wanted to become friends with them all.
Yeah, yeah, that's probably the healthiest way to do that.
A good
Especially,
example. Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry.
yeah.
Finish.
I mean, I didn't really have a lot to say on that particular topic. It's just that I understand why the negative assumption would be the default one,
Yeah.
because VTubers and content creators in general, they have a very high propensity of being uh extremely toxic narcissists. Like
Hmm.
unfortunately, content creation does attract the kind of people who are, to put it nicely, very high in the dark triad scores, and also sniff their own farts a little too much. So because of that, they are prone to very designed and calculated behaviors. And
Yeah.
not that calculated behaviors are bad inherently, it's just that for some reason content creation manages to attract a breed of people who manage to also be bad in their calculated behaviors.
Right, right. Like what I recognized was with a lot of my previous projects, the big thing I failed on was and this is a thing for a lot of people, right? There's almost a certain sense of like shame and embarrassment of advertising yourself. And it's really hard to be like, oh, I don't want to, I don't want to bother people by advertising myself. Like that was a big thing for me in the past. Like I wanted to almost do things in a way what I would saw as like honorably, I guess, where I was like, oh, I don't want to advertise myself at all because self-shilling, it feels weird, and I kind of just want, to be recognized for, what I do and stuff. But exposure is the biggest thing. And there are people who
Mm.
will like you who would never find you. And so for me, I kind of was like, okay, with this, I'm going to get over that. I'm going to be comfortable now. I'm going to try and be comfortable with advertising myself and saying like, hey, this is who I am and this is what I do. Take a look sometime, And I think getting over that was what allowed me to start to branch out and reach out more and make friends and stuff like that. Obviously, aside from the fact of just making friends, but in terms of being like, yes, this is my content and I'm proud of it and I'm showing it to the world type stuff. And actually advertise. Like, I mean, geez, I post on Reddit. Like, forgive me, but
Oh,
I self-advertise on Reddit,
oh,
bro.
brother,
Whatever it takes within my morality.
nah. Nah, I'm sorry, but plebit is definitely beyond my permissible values. I know, I resent that fucking place with a fiery passion. Throughout the short time when I even used plebit, I maintained a negative karma, and I will be forever proud of that fact.
Yeah, it's just, I just at this point I'm like, I know what my goals are, and I'm like, listen, if there's a place for self-advertising that allows self-advertising, I'm gonna use it.
That's true. That's true. I agree. It is a balancing act, and it's a bit of a learned skill just to understand, to read the room when self-advertising is appropriate. And sometimes it's kind of difficult to realize that when you're not really experienced.
Totally.
Yeah. I try to confine my self-shilling in spaces where it's just an understood where it's understood that it's a permissible behavior, or if someone actively engages and asks me about things I do,
Yep, same.
then like, but then again, there's also an appropriate way of doing that. Like you answer the question that was posted. You don't post your fucking social media links after that. Like
Exactly.
that's asinine to do.
Right. That's just common social awareness.
Yeah. Then again, there's like a lot of VTubers have a self promo tab in their Discords, and that's an appropriate place to signal boost certain things that you're doing, and
Yep.
that's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the Reddits, for example, the subreddits are, you can self, like on the virtual YouTuber subreddit, you are allowed to self post and self advertise once every 24 hours. So you better believe that I'm basically doing that on cooldown with clips I'm making and stuff like that. Absolutely. I'm following the rules. I post other things there. I comment on stuff, but I'm absolutely going to take advantage of that, you know?
I have no tolerance of the average plebiter. Sorry, I maintain that the average Reddit user is a full standard deviation below the 4chan user in terms of IQ.
Well, what I will say is this, is when I'm asking any question online these days, typing in Reddit before it ends up giving me the best answer. So,
no.
but hey, if I could type in other image boards beforehand and get a quick answer, I probably would.
It's not an image board. It's the fucking it's the special needs sandbox of the internet.
No, I'm saying if I could type in another image board that wasn't Reddit, hint hint, then I would do that if I could, if there was some sort of search function for that information. But when I need a question answered,
I maintain that Reddit simply pays for advanced placement in search results. I do not buy that Reddit pages appear in search results organically at the top. There is no shot.
Oh no, I think that's could be real. Yeah.
Yeah, there is too little of value to be gleaned from the entirety of Reddit for it to just organically be one of the first search results whenever you have a query, even ahead of specialized forums. Like, I ask an OBS question, and the first result is going to be the Google AI, and the second one is going to be fucking Plebit. And only then I will get the internal OBS forums with, actual people who know what the fuck they're talking about.
Yeah. No, I get that. Like, going to specialized forums is absolutely the right way, but I do think, like, my experience has been, if I and this is intentional, right? I'm not just Googling the question, but I'm actually typing like question and then Reddit, because I want to see a full discussion thread of people saying, no, that's stupid, or yes, that's right. And it works for me most of the time. So I can't knock it too much. Like, I mean, it'd be hypocritical if I was using it and I was knocking it that much, you know what I mean? So it's like, I can't knock it too much. I think it has some value. There's funny things on there sometimes.
Here's an important litmus test. Would you go to Reddit for exercise science advice?
Oh, well, no, because I know all that all. I know all
there
that.
You go. Well, I
that's
mean,
my expertise.
You don't know the totality of human knowledge on
of
the
course
subject.
not. No.
So you still glean information from external sources. It's just that you are probably learned and educated enough to know to not go to Reddit to look it up.
However, I do think even in a case like that, Reddit does have value to see what other people think, or to see what a general misunderstanding is, or to see like a general sample of routines, for example.
Listen, you go to Reddit to see people being wrong. That's exactly what I am saying.
No. What I mean is like if you're looking for something like, oh, what's a variety of routines that people do? Like, I like seeing, for example, something you can get on Reddit is someone's individual progression of, hey, they started on starting strength and then they did 5x5, or then they did strong lifts, then they did bro split. Like, their progression through different workout programs, that could be good information for me. And so there are times like that where I think it's pretty useful to look at.
So you're essentially still gathering like epidemiological data on people doing stuff wrong.
I mean, I guess if you want to say
wrong. I will double down on this point of Reddit not being of any value to the human race.
I just see it as data. That helps me get data. What I need.
It is data, as are STD contraction rates. That is accurate. They are both data sets.
I'm not afraid of data, man. I'll take in data.
Fair enough. That's you're not wrong in that estimation. It is definitely data. The only thing that I know how to do socially is drink tea. Green tea specifically. So I am blasting caffeine this entire time. It being a very effective diuretic.
Yummy. Oh man.
That on top of the can of yerba mate that I slammed before the stream.
Oh. Yeah, I stopped my caffeine experiment already. I went a week and a half in and I was like, no, that's okay. I don't want to.
Were you experiencing any kind of measurable effects?
Yeah, it worked really well for a week and a half until I started getting used to it, and then it became useless to me, and I didn't want to spend the money.
Oh, so you just became resistant.
Yeah, because I started becoming resistant to it, and so I was like, okay, that was
Mm,
a fun experiment, but I'll save it for when I need it from now on.
I see, I see, I see.
But
What were you using as a caffeine source?
Celsius, the energy drink.
Ah. See, I think that's where you sort of went wrong. You went for a pharmacologically pure source of caffeine. I think I'm able to sustainably consume so much caffeine because my primary source is tea, and in tea it's bound up by L-theanine.
Yep.
So I never experience sudden changes in my energy levels because the uptake is slowed down and the metabolization of it is also slowed down, so I don't have caffeine crashes.
Yeah, see, my thing was I was actually intentionally trying to like that's true. That's super true. I was trying to actually give myself like a normal American caffeine addiction as an experiment.
Ah, I
So
see.
that
I
was the
see.
point.
So you were essentially doing a caffeine version of Super Size Me.
Yeah, pretty much. I do that a lot. I've done that with
Mm.
keto before. I've done that with intermittent fasting. I like studying on myself sometimes to see how things work.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But yeah, so getting back to it real quick though. But
Yeah.
yeah, so like one thing actually really funny, another story about like getting started and stuff when I started VTubing recently was there was a VTuber by the name of Kiji the Waffle. I don't know if you're familiar with him at
Yeah.
all. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah, I'm familiar. I rode into him on a raid of yours.
oh, nice. Yeah. And so that was actually the funny thing because when I was getting started, when I was like watching everyone before I even made my social media and I was learning about everyone, Kiji was one of the first people I watched because he would start streaming
Mm.
right around when I was going to end streaming. So in my mind, it was like,
Ah.
oh, he's going to be an awesome raid target. Like he's going to be someone
Mm-hmm.
who I can raid into a bunch, who I can be friends with, and he's really cool, and I like watching his streams. Right as I debut, he disappears, and I was the
Damn.
whole time I've been thinking in the back of my mind. I even like I think I asked Daya about it once. I was like, yo, where's Kiji? What happened to Kiji? I never got to meet him, and sure enough, Kiji comes back like this week,
Mm-hmm.
and today I got to raid into him and finally be like, hey, and I told him the story too. But it was stuff like
Nice.
that where it was just like fun stuff like that. But yeah, I definitely want to not like stress the fact that it's like, yeah, it's not like some sort of like psycho manipulative like this is the best for my growth sort of thing. It was very much just like I want to learn about everyone. I'm going to see all the streams I like, the content I like. I'm going to give compliments to those people, and I'm going to do my thing. And like even now, when I finish my streams, I immediately will open up a couple tabs of other people's streams, start watching them, and I'll
Mm.
leave them on overnight. You know what I mean? Like I'll always be hanging out and talking to like at least two people. I'm not a big chatter because I have a
Mm-hmm.
lot of work. I can't multitask well. And so like when
Yeah.
I can't like talk in a stream and work on like my own like clipping and stuff like that. So usually I'll
Mm-hmm.
just leave it open and listen to it and have it on in the background. But I'll always like have people open and stuff. And also another big thing is like I wanted to be sure that I could give back as much support as I was getting. You know what I mean? And so that's why one of the reasons why I've been offering, what's usually a paid service, but like fitness information, nutrition planning, and stuff like that, pretty much for free. I've told a bunch
Yeah.
of people, like other VTubers, like, hey, if you want to come into my DMs, I'll like help you out if you have something. And like 7 or 8 people have taken me up on it so far. I've been helping them out in DMs with fitness ideas, with nutrition ideas, with workout plans and checkups and stuff like that. So I'm trying my best to give back, the support that I got because it was really for me after grinding for a very long time. I was talking about this actually on Thursday that I streamed in like I've streamed before too, not just other forms of content,
Mm-hmm.
but there were years where I was streaming to like 1 or 2 people. And
Mm-hmm.
now I feel like forever grateful, basically. Like all the support I got, I'm like, I am going to do whatever I can to give it back and never forget it, basically.
Yeah, that makes sense. Listen, I don't entirely discount being at least somewhat calculated in your actions. Like I engage in very calculated raids occasionally where they're just blatantly obvious clout chasing raids.
Hmm.
Like for example, I don't have a personal relationship with Kersha.
Right.
Kersha is a gigantic 4-view VTuber, but I still raid into her because she's on the same wavelength as a lot of my content, and I will get like 1 or 3 courtesy follows from every raid.
Yeah, you like
But
her,
then
she's funny, and it works out, It's mutual.
yeah, exactly. And I'm treated well by the chat. Like nobody points and laughs like look at this motherfucker raiding in with like
Right.
10 people
Right.
into
Right.
1,000.
Hmm.
Um but at the same time, I try to, at the very least, like interspace that with actually raiding into people who I'm on good terms with. Like I'll regularly raid into Digby or into Dante just because
Oh
they're
yeah.
friends and they're online, and I may as well.
Absolutely. Like for me, it's like friends online come first, absolutely, with raids.
Yeah.
My other thing that I've like a rule that I've made for myself is like if I get a raid from somebody in the community, I'm going to give that raid back to somebody in the community. If I go a
Mm,
stream where I have no raids though, then I'll consider raiding outside. But for me,
mm.
it's like, yeah, no, I kind of agree with that because the reality is it depends on your goal, right? If you're doing streaming
Yeah.
as a hobby and you're just having fun with it, you don't need to think about any of this. But the reality is that if you're trying to grow and if you're trying to give your best effort and, really make it like part of your life or like a job or something like that, you have to look at numbers and you shouldn't let them brainworm you, but you have to look at
Yeah.
numbers. You have to look at like trying to grow, trying to network kind of with intentionality because that's the job. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like you,
you have to be intentional with the things you do still. Like I've scalped people from, for example, Sargon's community by floating around when he was doing Zomboid and stuff.
mhm. Yeah,
And like I was genuine in enjoying and participating in the community, but I'm not going to pretend it didn't benefit me in terms of my follower numbers.
oh, totally, totally. Because like the reality is like any big indie, any corpo are all doing this stuff. They're all looking
Yeah.
like no one who's like who's really big and trying to do this with intention and making a good run of it is not looking at all that data and making conclusions based off of it. You know, they're like, I'm trying to be better.
Yeah, I can say with confidence that it was never a coincidence that all of a sudden Niji-Sanji Japan just started having collaborations with Hololive.
Yeah.
There was a yen sum attached to a piece of paper, and it was a sizable fucking amount of money, I can tell you that.
Totally. One thing that I really like doing too is like I think sometimes of like networking can be beneficial for everyone is the thing, right? So like think about this. If I'm networking, say, with someone who ends their stream around the time that I start, or in the case where somebody starts around when I end, in both of those cases, it's beneficial to everyone. It's not like we're competing because we're in completely different time zones, right? It's like
Yeah.
that really doesn't make sense. Like you're not competing with
Hmm.
somebody who's not in your time zone or time slot at all. So it's a matter of like, hey, your follower now, this viewer, is like I am someone who he is going to watch after you are done. He's a viewer of yours and he might
Mm.
become a viewer of mine. We're not competing with each other. We can just be extra content for him if he likes us, right? Remember, you're never forcing viewers to watch you.
I have a slight disagreement there. I have a slight disagreement. First of all, it depends on the niche. You're only not competing if the content you make is either materially different or complementary. For example, like you and me, we would be complementary because
Hmm.
I stay, even for my exercise component, I stay on the cross training and combat training, firearms training side,
Right,
as
right.
opposed to going ham on the nutrition and hypertrophy side of it. Even though like I'll share some advice, but it's going to be, as we've discussed previously, very aggressive and asinine advice. But for example, people who are roughly in the same category, maybe a category that relies heavily on parasocial relationships, even if they're in different time slots, they will be competing for that extra bit of expendable income that the Oilers are expected to spend.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, like I guess yeah, that's
Yeah,
fair. If you're thinking in terms of like subs and stuff like that, yeah. I wasn't thinking
yeah.
about that. I just like monetized and did the affiliate thing like last week, so I wasn't thinking
Hmm.
about that. But I get what you're saying.
Listen,
No, that is true. That is
the
true.
only reason, yeah, the only reason I'm affiliate is because I wanted the funny redeems because
Oh,
Venian
totally.
supports like a whole suite of redeems, and I wanted to tie them to point redeems that are just easier to navigate than me having a full directory of text commands for people to memorize.
Hmm. Yeah, and as for me, like I hated the idea of people having ads, which is why I waited 2 months after getting affiliate before even activating it, because I was like, I want time for people to have easy access, to be able to jump in and not have to worry about it. But then it got to the point where it's like, okay, I want people to be able to build channel points and have the redeems and stuff. And also, like, yeah, I'm trying to do this as like a big push, like I did content for
Mm-hmm.
a long time. I want to make this a really, the thing I stick with. And so, like, if this could become another income source, or if it could become like the only income source, that'd be awesome. That's something I'm trying out. I'm trying my best. There's no secret there, right? And that would be like, that would be amazing. That would be super fun to be able to do this full time. But that's not like, I'm not going to do anything scummy to get there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, that's understandable. I think the negative of ads is kind of overplayed. Like, if you don't like having ads, just have pre-rolls. Because if
Hmm.
someone can't sit through a 40-second ad, they're not going to watch your content. Like,
Yeah.
it's not going to happen. It's not going to filter anyone who was willing to watch your content in the first place. And I really question having mid rolls just as a general fixture because first of all, it detracts from your attention. Are your earnings technically higher from those ad views? Yes, they are. I know that because I've tried both, and I've had better earnings from mid rolls than I had from just simply having pre rolls
I didn't even
because
know you got earnings from ads on Twitch, really. I thought they was like
well,
negligible.
I mean, they are negligible, but I can still compare the numbers because the surface area of ads that, for example, I would have is very different. If I My streams are usually very long form, and I cater to people who come in at the beginning of the stream and sit through the entire 3 4 hours
Yep.
that we do, and I don't want them pilloried with ads. I want them to get it over with the pre-roll ads, suffer through the 40 seconds, and never be bothered or distracted from the content again. Am I screwing myself over in terms of any kind of ad revenue I would be looking at? Yeah, certainly. I don't want to mess with it just because the earnings from it were never enough to warrant me bothering with the ads in the first place.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah, I think the extent to which a pre-roll ad would filter potential viewers is very much overestimated, and people are putting up with the mid-roll ads for diminishing returns essentially.
Hmm. Yeah, I decided to go with mid rolls, and I haven't hated it so far. And my process, like the reason why I did was it took a while because the first thing I
Hmm.
did was look up if I could find any data or any polls on if people preferred pre rolls or mid rolls, and it looked pretty split. There was just as many people railing against mid rolls and that as there were pre rolls. And so I was like, okay, there's no right answer. You're going to gate somebody by
Hmm.
having pre rolls. You're going to gate somebody by having mid rolls. And so I looked into it and I was like, all right, well, my thing is and I always wanted this experience. I wanted someone to be able to click on my channel and see me immediately, and they see what I'm doing immediately, no matter
Hmm.
what. So I was like, I preferred not doing pre rolls. And honestly, the mid roll thing has been fun for me too, because I get to take a little break where, especially me, like my streams, I'm very talkative. I can't not talk for like 5 seconds or 10 seconds. So having that like 3 minute break every hour is actually really nice for me because I get to walk, I get to get up, I get to get a drink, I can go to the bathroom, and I can be like, okay, mental reset. It's like a nice little break for me. So it's actually really been nice. And I'm going to integrate
Mm.
games into chat though, so people don't actually have to watch the ads.
Yeah, you see, like the main issue with mid-rolls for me, I hate it when when an ad pops up in the middle of a conversation.
Yeah, I do it
Because that
manually, so it
way,
doesn't do that.
yeah, well, again, you do it manually. I mean, as a viewer, I don't like that. I don't like it when I'm having a conversation with, for example, someone with a streamer, for example,
Hmm.
and then I post something or I type something where I want the response, and then I'm hit with an ad, and I'm put into this awkward position of, well, if you don't want to be hit by ads or interrupted by ads, you need to be subbed.
Oh yeah, no. And so there's an option to avoid that.
Yeah, I understand that component of it, but I also don't want to put the streamer into the position of having to react to a chat twice simply because I've been caught in an ad break.
Yeah, totally. And that's like, I think the reason that happens is people haven't taken a close look at the ad manager settings. I've noticed that a lot too. And that is the worst case scenario. I agree. Like, if that were the case, I wouldn't do it. But that's because they're running like automatic ads, or they're
Yeah.
not realizing when ads are coming. So in my case, I have a 4 minute be right back ad screen. And at the top
Mm.
of the hour, when I know an ad is coming, I run it manually and I go away and I say, okay, I will be back in 4 minutes. Here is the ad, so that they're never
Hmm.
missing gameplay, they're never missing a conversation. So if you pay attention to it and take it manually, you can avoid that.
See, I don't trust myself to control that. For example, like a lot of the games I play, they're very attention intensive.
Hmm.
Like if I play Tekken, I don't want to worry about managing an ad on top of already playing Tekken and doing all of the frame math.
Yeah, yeah, no, I get it. I get it. Like, I
Yeah.
have the bandwidth to, like, for me, it's a matter of like, okay, I know I run ad right away when I start during my starting soon, so no one sees it, and then it's an hour
Hmm.
later. So I know I start at noon. I look down at the clock in the corner right of my computer. Okay, it's 1 p.m. I know the ad's coming, and so I can
Hmm.
look and be like, okay, hit it manually. Again, same deal. It's 2:04. I know the ad's coming. It does require extra bandwidth and paying attention. But I've enjoyed it so far. But again, I might switch back. Like if people are like, man, I really don't like the mid rolls, I'm like, all right, then we won't do them. You know?
I think it's frowned upon, or at the very least, a lot of people wouldn't want to complain about mid rolls specifically because they're sort of, they are placing themselves in a situation where they're complaining about a thing that they have the power to fix. You just pay $5 to Twitch and you're no longer exposed to the ads.
Yeah, or
And
use
it's
the
not an
blocker.
issue. Listen, I don't encourage that just because I don't do that. Because fuck, I don't want to mess with any kind of external hardware on top, or rather, external software on top of my Chrome. Like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to expect people to do that. But at the same time, maybe it's a personal hang up of mine. I don't like complaining about things that I have the power to fix and am refusing to fix.
Oh, sure, sure. But like, you know, it's a little like if it's a paid option, it's still like kind of annoying. It's like, okay, I have to pay money. But the ad blocker thing is like a free option that people can do. But no, I get it.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I understand ads are annoying. I'd prefer not to have them. If I could shut them off, I would, you know, and keep the
Mm,
emotes and the
yeah.
channel points. I'm sure a lot of us would. I'm sure most of us would.
Yeah, the emotes were another big reason. I really like having my own emotes.
Yeah, yeah, no, they're fun. I need to get like good ones. Like I got some, but and I really like the happy that Gunpei made because having a happy is like
Mm.
necessary, of course. But I'd like to get some fancier ones.
Yeah, but you don't have a smooch.
Wait, what's the smooch?
You don't know what a smooch is.
I don't know what a
Oh
smooch is.
boy.
Hold on, send it to me.
The
Send it to me.
it is a highly exclusive emote that only 3 people have as far as I'm
No,
aware.
legendary.
Yeah. Legendary. Ultra rare emote. If I can locate it just a second.
Ultra rare premium emote.
Yeah, 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 yeah. You could even say that it's a shiny emote.
Whoa, I know about those. Whoa, I see it. Oh my god.
Yeah, I'm not gonna
Wow.
show this in the final footage, so y'all will have to look this up in your own time.
Where'd you get that one?
The Gunpei made it for me.
Oh wow, but it's an ultra rare. It's an ultra rare gunpei.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
Exclusive. The only people who have those are Gunpei, Fuza, and myself.
Nice.
It
But
was
yeah,
a sort of it was imposed on me as a hazing ritual, so I decided to meet it head on,
of
face
course you
first,
gotta,
even.
you gotta. But yeah, I just you know, it's important to be if your goal, you know, it's the thing is like if your goal, it depends on the goal. If your goal is growth, it's important to be intentional about what you're doing. It's important to
Mm.
look at your analytics and to look at like watch your own streams and be like, is there something I could do better? Always trying to improve. That's the point, right? No one's
Mm.
like, I don't know. I guess there's this is idea that people should just kind of like casually just be the best at everything and never look at any of that stuff and go in and just pop off and get
Uh,
huge and they're like I didn't look at any of that, like I'm above it, and it's like
nah.
no, that's not realistic.
I
Like you
don't
need
believe
to,
in that.
yeah, I
No.
don't believe in that. You have to try hard and you have to put in effort, and a lot, you know, a lot of time too, a lot of experience too. Like I said earlier, it's very rare it's people's first thing that pops off.
Listen, there are two types of people that say that they ignore the numbers. First ones are liars, and the second group are people who are just coping about that because they're not able to improve.
Yeah, I mean, I think like there are probably some hobby people too who are just doing it for a hobby, who don't like
Even if you're doing something for a hobby, I don't know, maybe it's just my own personal brainworms, but if I'm doing something as a hobby and the hobby stagnates despite me investing significant amounts of time into it, I would be compelled to, at the very least, look into ways of doing better or reasons why I'm not doing better.
Yeah, that I do agree with. I have the same mind.
Regurgitating something over and over and seeing zero results or zero change is just maddening. And I
Hmm.
can't imagine anyone being okay with that.
Yeah, like the when I say hobby, I think what I mean is like the hobby's not so much like VTubing is not the goal, it's the mechanism. So a good example, I mean, is like say somebody just likes the idea of they're going to come online and stream because they want to make some friends and have online friends to play games with, and so numbers don't really
Mhm.
matter to them because they're just like they want to meet a handful of people, 4 or 5 people, to be good buddies and play games with and have these avatars and that experience. And that's like that's totally fine, right? That's totally cool. And in
Mhm.
those cases, yeah, you probably don't need to look at numbers, you know?
So here's the thing. Like I treat VTubing as a hobby in more ways than one. For example, like if I'm ever offered the option to go corpo, my answer is just universally going to be no. If Hollow
Hmm.
Stars breaks down my door tomorrow and tells me that I am their next talent whether I like it or not, I will fight them off and tell them no.
You're CQC them in your house. Get away from me.
Exactly, exactly. I will throw flashbangs and I'll beat them to the draw and place 5 center mass.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
because it's just not appealing to me to do this as a job.
Hmm.
That being said, even though it is a hobby, I invest a significant chunk of my personal time and I have to schedule around it and move certain things around. Like today, I've cut out time out of my week to sit down and like record this podcast,
Oh, totally.
which is it's a component of my VTubing. I carve out 4 hours twice a week for my regular streams. And like it's displacing other things that I could be doing. I could be
Oh, yeah.
investing more time into learning the shakuhachi. I could be doing my language reps. I could be, I don't know, I could do an extra workout throughout the week or not have to place my workouts so awkwardly within the week. Those are all things that would have been possible had I not been occupying this time with VTubing. And therefore, if I'm going to ascribe any amount of time to it, I would like to see linear growth, even however slow it will be, given my moderate investment in terms of effort and resource.
Yeah, yeah. No, like, and that's like what I mean when I say that if your goal is VTubing versus like something like making friends, right? Because like if VTubing is your
Yeah.
hobby, yes, you probably want to see some growth. If you're just here to make a couple friends, you probably don't care. And VTubing is just a method rather than the goal, and it's like a inconsequential medium, basically, right? Because,
Sure, but at that point
yeah,
you're also probably at that point you're also probably not streaming regularly anyway.
true,
You
true.
find you find a clique, you stay in the clique, maybe you hang out in Discords, and that's
Hmm.
about it. And at that point, yes, I can believe that it's not something where you would like to see deliberate growth since you're barely doing it anyway.
Yeah, yeah. And like as for me, like I'm spending I mean, since I've started, I've spent about 40 or 50 hours a week working on VTubing stuff. Like it's been full-time
There you
job
go.
level. And
Yeah.
it's crazy. Like the amount of behind the scenes work with obviously like collabing and stuff like that because I've had like God, there were some weeks where I had like 3 collabs on top of my 4 streams, and then I'm doing all clipping and uploading. Whew.
You're burning the candle from both ends
Yeah,
in a certain way. You are speed running the numbers game.
yeah, I'm getting my sleep though. I get my sleep. I did, but actually, real story. I did kind of like tell my friends because like my friend group in real life, like, all right, guys, I might not be around much for the next couple months. I gotta grind real hard for a little bit.
And that's understandable. I think that if you're not willing to grind and display certain things with an activity you're pursuing, maybe you shouldn't be pursuing it at all.
Yeah, and like I said, it is a different scale for me, just because like I am taking it super like head on with all the effort I possibly can. So
Yeah.
there's a different level. Like I'm almost coming out of this. It's not like spite's the wrong word for it, but for me, it's like a matter of like I have never had the opportunity to go full out. Where
Mm.
every other time I was doing content creation, it was always like I had other things going on, and I held myself back on self advertising, like I said. And this is the only time I've been like, okay, I have the time, I have the mental, like the mental fortitude for it right now, the energy levels and stuff like that. So this is me going full out, kind of. And it was like I just want to see what happens if I can go full out for as long as I can, and see how long I can go full out for. So that it's kind of like a not spite, but it's like I want to see how far I can go type thing.
it's a deliberation kind of thing, and I also think that it's a benefit of us being in an older cohort. We're not
Hmm.
college students. We're not displacing, life opportunities to do this. We
Yeah,
have the extra time and the extra money to burn on silly hobbies, and the silly hobby just happens to be VTubing.
totally.
And that's fine for us because, we have a certain fallback. We're not derailing our life for the sake of content creation.
Right.
And
Right. I
like,
mean, I might be a little bit.
are you really though? Like you have your mainline job still. Like you're still mostly displacing hobbies as opposed to displacing like real life opportunities at work.
Oh, sure, but I am treating it very much like oh god, how's the way to say it? So I've switched careers quite a bit. So I've been in like 5 different careers. That's why I always
Hmm.
talk about being like, "Oh yeah, like I worked in the game industry. Oh, I was a teacher. Oh, I did all that." I just like swapped between a bunch of different things every few
Hmm.
years and took new opportunities. And so me, VTubing is another one of those where I'm like, this might be something that I want to do full time and make part of my life going forward for quite a while. And so I'm
Hmm.
making an effort at it right now. I'm seeing if that can shake out. And so it is kind of a displacement in the sense of like I'm going for it as more than a hobby.
Sure, sure, but you're not doing the college student thing of, "Oh, I'm going to make it big as the next Logan Paul, therefore I don't need to go to work or to school."
Yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing the all or nothing. Like I got,
Mm.
I'm older, I'm measured. I got plenty of
Yeah,
fallbacks. I got plenty of other jobs I could do and stuff like that. But this is what I want to
exactly.
do. And I thought that personally it was like I had a lot of fun in my 20s, right? I had a
Mm.
lot of fun in my 20s and I was like, going to my 30s, I want to become an idol.
You still look like you're having fun.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. I want to have even more fun in my 30s. So
Mm.
this is the way.
Exactly. Who's there to stop you? And with advancements in medicines and longevity tech, who's to stop us from having fun even longer?
I'm going to live to 2000. I don't know about you.
Easy, easy. Listen, I definitely have good genes in terms of aging because my dad is like he's soon going to be touching 80 and like he's still not on TRT. He outswims me in open water.
Oh, sick.
Uh yeah, so he's like a very experienced endurance athlete. So he's been essentially brewing and drinking the immortality potion for like a good part of his life.
Yeah, he's
He's
been
essentially
cultivating.
he Yeah, yeah, yeah. He's been melding that golden core for like longer than I've been alive. So we have some in-family know-hows of how to stave certain things off, and on top of that, there are also, scientific advancements and a lot of useful things becoming more readily available. Like I am willing to be the guinea pig to try mesenchymal stem cells to then green light that for my dad to use.
Yeah, yeah. I'm kind of unlucky in that way where I just all the men die in my family and die pretty early and literally on like both sides of my family, the only guy that's alive is me and my dad. And
Well, you'll have the odds to turn that trend around.
yeah, yeah. So as long as my dad doesn't die early, then I'm like, okay, I have a shot. But because he was very healthy too. He's a
Nice.
fitness guy, but different angle than me. He's like a marathon runner.
Mm. Ooh.
Yep, both of his legs are fake.
Oh fuck.
Well, not legs, knees. Sorry, knee replacement. He has
Knees,
double knee
yeah.
replacement. Yeah,
Oh, that's rough. Listen, take a deep look into the auspicious feng shui tier, and
yeah,
just
yeah.
keep dad souped up.
Keep him souped up. But it is really funny because we've teched into different things. I'm a lot bigger than he is too. I'm a
Yeah.
lot taller than him. So it's
Mm.
really funny because we look like I look like an ogre next to him. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't look like I'm his son so much as like he's my like handler. I look like a
the
beast, a
the
beast next to him. I'm like twice as big as him.
he's there to wrangle you.
Yeah.
We do have a similar thing going on with my dad. So because we're about the same stature height wise, but I am also as wide as I am tall.
Yeah. It's fun. It's fun. It's really fun. Like, God, I hate to say it like this, but it's fun mogging your dad.
But again, yeah, you can mog him in terms of just pure strength, which is, also a product of your age to a large extent.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that like same as how my dad can just completely mog me in terms of endurance sports. Like you put me on a bike and I will be miserable.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that there's a similar dynamic between the two of you.
Yep, I can't run at all, and he can run
There you go.
marathons. So there is
There you
that.
go.
Yeah, but one of my favorite things about having like gone into powerlifting and strength training is you can legitimately look back on your family history and be like, okay, because of the advancements of understanding understanding protein and understanding how to lift optimally and understanding like how to recover properly, I can say
Mm.
with pretty good certainty that it's like, yeah, I'm probably the strongest person in my entire family like line ever, which is really
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. Well, listen, for me it's an unfair advantage to begin with because I come from families that were either academics or like people in the arts, so I just retroactively mog them because they never tried. I am just
Right,
built
right.
different. I am the violent adaptation response to like the recent history of like Jews in the Soviet Union.
Yeah, that'll do it.
I am the adaptation.
Yeah, I am built different.
Apparently we now need to breed the special combat Jew.
Oh no. Yeah, I my family was like historical military family basically, but
Yeah.
military is not about physical strength. It's about just overall like endurance and stamina and stuff like
Mm,
that. So,
yeah, yeah.
but
Well,
yeah.
it's more it's interesting to compare military histories of different countries, especially if they were participating in different campaigns or in the same campaign but differently. Because like I was exposed to a lot of Russian military history because that's part of the mythos of the country because the current Russian state derives a lot of its legitimacy from the Soviet Union's participation in a part of World War II.
Hmm.
Not all of World War II. For some reason they leave 1939 out of their storytelling. Um, but it's interesting to compare the stories that are being proliferated about the Great Patriotic War uh, to stories that are told about the Pacific War, because uh, the Soviet Union's participation in World War II is usually a story of like self sacrifice by masses of people to achieve a certain combat goal in the face of overwhelming odds.
Yeah.
Whereas most of the stories that I hear about the Pacific Theater is people doing their job well or doing it so extremely well that they succeed against overwhelming odds. Like
Right.
it's a story. It's the examples of like people of constant self-sacrifice to make impossible things happen versus let's just follow protocol and do our job,
Hmm.
which is an interesting difference in perspectives.
Yeah, my family was very much like in terms of like the military history side. It was they were very very early America, like before
Mm.
America was America, and it was very much a matter of like, yep, Revolutionary War, and then on the side of the abolitionists, and then like it's all of like the fight for freedom side.
Mm.
So it was very like, oh yeah, we dude betray England immediately. Press that button. Get given land grants by the king and betray him.
Fuck you and your taxes.
Yeah, get out of here, man.
Listen, as an American, I am very proud of the fact that I still owe taxes in Britain and I will be never paying them.
It's cultural history right there. That's
Hell
you're
yeah,
just
hell yeah.
paying it back, bringing it back.
Just living there long enough to have some tail end of unpaid council tax because it's completely unenforceable and never paying the TV license. Yeah.
Yeah,
Put
got him.
that in your pipe and smoke it.
Did they ever knock and ask you for the TV license? Like I know that's like a joke, but also real.
They never knocked, but I would get letters about never paying. Like they knew that I was registered to this address because I was registered with the council and I paid the council tax.
Yeah.
And they would send the letter, oh, like we're with the TV license authority and we know that you're not paying your TV license. And I'm like, I'm not supposed to pay your TV license because first of all, I don't have a TV in my apartment and I don't have cable.
Right.
So fuck you.
Yeah, don't they try and like argue that any screen could be a TV and so you need to pay it anyway or something like
So
that?
no, you have to pay it if you watch TV British TV broadcasts. That
Yeah,
is their
yeah.
argument. That is what's being taxed.
Mhm.
And my argument is I don't watch broadcast TV. I watch YouTube.
Right.
That doesn't fall under the purview of the TV license. They're like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah.
I've
Oh,
I've
okay.
actually I've actually so people don't know this, and like UK bros, take notes. First of all, the TV license is not an enforceable law. There is no mechanism of actually enforcing or proving the fact that you owe TV license.
Mm.
Second of all, you can opt out. You can just call the TV license center. I actually did that. I called the TV license center and I said, "Listen, I don't have cable. I don't have a dish. I don't watch broadcast TV. I don't even own a TV. Leave me alone." And they're like, "Okay, well, we'll just mark it down that you're not supposed to pay TV license, and that's it."
Oh, cool. You just, yeah, opt out. That makes sense. I mean,
Yeah.
really, who watches broadcast anymore?
I used to watch broadcast TV whenever I would visit and stay in a hotel, but that is different because that's covered by the hotel's TV license.
Right,
I
right,
like
right.
broadcast TV as a novelty. Whenever I travel somewhere, and if it's like a place like Japan, I like watching broadcast TV because it's funny.
Yeah.
Because Japanese TV is a meme justifiably so because it is a fucking meme. Because you can flip through the channels at like 1 a.m. in Tokyo and you'll happen onto Itagaki explaining his character writing process in Baki to the Hollow Girls,
Right, right. Just
which
whatever.
is which is an which is an actual thing that I have encountered while flipping through the channels.
Oh, that's amazing. I wish, man. I mean, I did.
Multiple nights, by the way. Like it was a
Oh,
series of them doing that like for several evenings on broadcast TV. I forget the channel, but it was him and it was Itagaki explaining his writing process to Noel, and I forget all of the other ones who were there.
yeah. I've been unlucky. The only thing I ever found flipping through Japanese TV was Ultraman one time. Other than that, I was like, come on, where's
Mm.
everything funny? Where's the cool stuff I know?
You know what is the funniest thing I've ever found while flipping through Japanese TV? So it was before I was even vaguely conversational. So my Japanese was non-existent at the time, and because I was jet lagged, I woke up at 4 a.m. and I went out to
So
the
the sun
combini
was
to get
up.
something. No, it wasn't. It was not up because it was early spring, I think. I'm I may be placing the time of year wrong, but it was definitely dark. I was jet lagged, so I woke up in the middle of the night. I got something to eat from a combini, and I was flipping through the channels because I was bored. And I stumbled upon an episode of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Now I know that it was Stardust Crusader as it was coming
Oh,
out, and it was the episode where Joseph Joestar got that growth in his arm,
oh
and me
no.
with that. Now imagine just the mind melting effect on me watching it without understanding a lick of spoken Japanese. An anime about a guy getting his ass beat by a growth on his own forearm.
And you're just like,
It was just the most Japan moment ever. It was Japan never change.
I remember when I was like 8 or 9. Are you familiar with the anime movie Metropolis?
I am not.
Okay.
Not off the top
It's
of my head.
it's like a very dramatic anime at the end and it's very like emotional, right? But as
Hmm.
a kid, it was on, I think it was on like Toonami or something at like midnight or 1 a.m. And I was not old enough or primed to see it. Like I wasn't mentally prepared to watch it. And so I woke up in the middle of the night and I was playing because we had left the
Oh
TV on. It was a
boy.
sleepover. It was a
I'm
sleepover.
I- I'm googling it. It looks rough.
Okay, the last scene of Metropolis is the entire like city collapsing while like classical music plays, like happy upbeat music plays
Oh.
basically. And as a kid, I couldn't understand the dissonance in that and why that was interesting. And I thought it was the
Hmm.
funniest thing I had ever seen in my life. I was laughing so hard I was crying and I woke everyone up because I was like
Mm.
8, just dying seeing this happen in front of me because I couldn't believe what I was watching.
Nice.
Just happy
Nice.
music while a city collapses.
I should watch it. It looks like a good watch. A lot of good anime was made in that sort of
Yeah.
weird time.
Yeah.
For we don't get good anime. I'm sorry. Like we get serviceable anime. We get very high quality slop most of the time. But we no longer get things like we don't get the original Ghost in the Shell or any Ghost in the Shell movie by that metric. Like I really like the Bato movie of the Ghost in the Shell series.
Hmm.
It has so many layers of depth to it, and some people could say it's pretentious to quote the classics every 10 minutes, but I appreciate that. I like listening to dialogue written by actually intelligent people as opposed to whatever is being made right now.
There is some like hidden gem stuff these days. I know I know a fair bit about the industry and production side just because one of my best friends works in the anime industry, doing like localization
Oh
and that sort of work,
no.
and like Blu-ray release stuff. But
Hmm.
it's just, yeah, there's some gems out there. There's some gems out there these days that is modern, but yeah, a lot of the like, you know, you're not, if you're watching like the best of anime and trying to find like the most interesting anime these days, you're not watching seasonals. Seasonal watching has always been like a,
Yeah, it's always
I
slop.
hate using the slop word, but it's like it is like, yeah,
I'm
for your
sorry.
seasonals,
Listen,
it's 9 out of 10 are not going to be worth your time.
make something that's not slop, or and I will stop using the word
I will
slop. Okay?
unslop it.
Yeah.
I'm
Fuck you.
like, I don't
Unslops
want
your
to.
anime.
I don't I don't want to, like, obviously people are still creating it, and I don't want to like insult the original authors because I'm sure it's fun and I
The
enjoy slop.
original
I
authors,
watch
listen,
isekai, you know?
listen, the original authors are well aware of the fact that they are making slop. People who make things like Komi-san are well aware of the fact that they took a cookie cutter format and filled it with pure uncut slop.
Well, I still respect it.
I don't. Sorry, no, you know exactly what you're doing. If you're on episode 400 of One Piece, you know exactly what you're doing.
Oh, I know what I'm doing. I'm on episode 1050 something of One Piece.
Oh, I don't mean no, I don't mean you're watching the
Oh yeah,
400th
yeah.
episode. I mean if you're making the 400th episode and like drawing the 200th innocuous filler episode that does nothing to progress the story, you
Yeah.
know exactly what you're doing.
Well, lucky for us, One Piece is actually high quality, one of the best anime ever, and not at all slop. So luckily, we have that going for us.
Highly debatable. Fact check required.
You know what's funny though? It's actually really funny because both my friend and I, like my friend he's nuts. He works in the industry and he's seen, I think, over 700 anime series.
Mm,
He's an absolute, it's all he does. It's all he does is his whole
mm.
life. And let me tell you, when both of us for the first time, not even having nostalgia bait, watched One Piece from start to finish in 9 months in like 2022, 2021, and we're both like, yep, great anime, amazing, we love it. Like even after all those anime, all that time, we still adore it, you know?
Listen, again, I'm not immune to watching slop. Like I watch Konosuba, and
Yeah, same.
as witty and comedic the writing may be, it's still it's second like it's second degree slop. It's making fun of slop, but it's still slop inherently. Like it's not an art form, okay? Like we're glazing over the fact that comedy is barely an art form in and of itself. It's more of a scientific exercise because it's very formulaic anyway. But like I don't know, Goblin Slayer is very very low IQ enjoyment. It's very much Doom. It's like watching a Doom game but medieval. And I
Yeah.
understand that the enjoyment that I derive from Goblin Slayer is very reptilian brain. It's just it is the male pattern autism that makes it enjoyable for me. It's me watching someone do a mechanically good job, and that is the aspect of it that I respect.
Oh yeah, totally. But I think the thing we should take away from that is that, like, yeah, we can, I guess, accept that. I see, it's the thing I kind of, the thing I have tough problem with and I don't like very much and I don't do is like, yeah, it's slop, but we like it. Like we watch it and we like it and we're having a good time with it. So it's like, we're having fun. We like it. We consider it good in a way.
Listen, Baki is hardly a masterpiece. Definitely not a gem of intelligent writing, especially when Itagaki forgets that his lane is muscular men punching each other very hard and him being in the closet. Like
Yeah.
whenever he veers away from that into political commentary, it becomes borderline unwatchable. I still watch all of Baki and I still read the entire Baki Do arc. So, like there is a time and place for that, and Japan's GDP relies on a constant flow of slop in light novel form and manga form, and then the best slop is then ascending into anime form and full feature movie form.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
does not, it does not, like, it doesn't disqualify it from having a right to exist, and more so, it by existing, it creates an industry for true examples of art existing. You can't have Ghost in the Shell without an anime industry that subsists in slop. You need to have Bleach in order to have the good, really artistic things, because the really artistic things also rarely pay for themselves.
Oh yeah.
And they need that rich soil of those excess profits, of that cash positivity for them to appear.
Yep. Same thing with games. Actually, like back when AA games were really popular, right? Because nowadays people focus, like the big companies focus so much on pumping actually like hundreds of millions of dollars into advertising budget of AAA games that are feeling like they're becoming quadruple A. And indies are taking the place where AA's used to be.
The gaming industry, I think, is very different because your production cycle is very different, and the the cash flows look very different. And what I mean by that is you when I'm describing the anime industry, you need slop to make the profits to create the fertile soil that will then pay for gems to be made, which
Hmm.
is the life cycle that I'm describing. The gaming industry is very different in the sense that today's slop loses money, and it's losing money hand over fist.
Yeah, I'm talking about the past, not right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. I
Well,
was
then
talking
again,
about back in the day.
was there really slop back in the day? I think that game production was always such a labor intensive thing, and it never enjoyed a particularly luxurious existence. It was never bankrolled by a publishing house the same way an experimental manga would be, where you even had the liberty of making something artistic and have it sit on a profitable backdrop of slop. Like for example, I don't know, like EA, like sports slops and
Oh
sport
yeah,
games
yeah.
were always printing money, but that money was never used to fund anything worthwhile.
Sometimes there were experiments, like EA in particular, did have some experimental divisions where they did try some other stuff and probably was
Hmm.
funded partially by slot money. But like another example too is like if we're talking like really old history, right? Like
Yeah.
pre-video game crash, all of like the movie license games and even post-video game crash in the
Hmm.
80s, all the movie license games where it's like these are made on a very low budget, they suck, but we're going to sell a million copies because the movie's popular. And just the idea of like experimental games after getting your money from shit like that.
But were there experimental games that made it, or did the movie license tie-ins actually cause the crash of the industry?
Yeah, well, in the 80s, they did because their quality was so bad. But they still, prior to that, were getting a lot of money from it. And then after that, once it recovered, we're getting a lot of money from that sort of thing. So,
Hmm. Well, yeah. It's sort of similar, but like the phases are so far removed from each other. So you're having like a downstream consequence kind of thing as opposed to one directly feeding the other.
yeah, I guess what I'm saying is, like medium wise, the idea of taking a risk on a unique
Hmm.
product, right? In the video game industry and anime industry, both do share that, like a weird artistic thing.
It's like taking a risk is a part of it, but that's not really what I'm trying to express. It's
Okay.
more along the lines of slop funding the industry and filling it with enough money and enough profits to make it productive enough to have these unicum growths appear on it. I don't know, maybe
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
I'm explaining this poorly, but
No, I see what you're saying.
you
Yeah.
you yeah, you need an industry buildup by Dragon Ball Z excuse me, you need an industry built up by a Dragon Ball Z, and like generically saying Dragon Ball Z, for there to be an Evangelion.
Yeah, yeah.
Even though I think that Evangelion is an inferior product, for example, compared to the aforementioned Ghost in the Shell.
Yeah, when I think of anime slop, like what I thought you were referring to is like endless like light novel adaptations and like very very simple shows, because like I wouldn't consider things like Bleach and DBZ and One Piece slop that like funded the
I
industry. I would more say like things like the seasonals that are forgotten, literally lost media seasonals because nobody cared about them. Ours are like true slop.
I think that the definition of slop is something that gives people job security for years. That
Okay,
being Naruto, that being Bleach, that being One Piece.
but what
They
if they're
are the
good?
three. Yeah, here's the catch: they're not.
Yeah, what if they're good? They
As
are. They're
as
super
someone listen
good.
as someone who's sat down and watched in excess of 300 episodes of Bleach, it is not good.
Well, I
It
can't
is
speak to Bleach. I've never
formulaic.
finished it.
I have never finished it. It is impossible to finish Bleach. That is the nature of the beast. It is slop because of that. You keep coming back to it and you keep eating the same consistence, like you keep watching the same show over and over again, and it has certain changes and the storyline sort of pretends to move, but in reality it just lays there and you have to do the majority of the intellectual and emotional heavy lifting to even give a fuck about what's going on. And
But
yes,
Kuromaru,
it
he
is.
gets in danger, and then the big form comes, and then the upgrade comes, and then he gets stronger.
Yes, exactly. You add the joints and then you add the ligaments and all of the other meat that you can't use in any other meat product, and you then grind it down into pink paste. Exactly.
Man, you know the only thing I will absolutely like, I'm gonna come out and be the first anti of this. Not the
Hmm.
first anti, but I'm gonna actually anti something. Have you seen slime reincarnated as a slime?
I have not.
Okay, so
I
as with
know I know
most
of it because of the pretty girls in it. That's it.
Okay, as with most light novel adaptations, like
Hmm.
every isekai these days is like, okay, weird idea that we run for one season and then it becomes a normal isekai because the
Yeah.
idea it lost its novelty basically.
Yeah.
I have never watched anything like Slime where it has gone so off the rails, like ridiculous, overpowered with absolutely no counter. Like I'm not gonna get too far
Mm.
into this, but I have a friend who just enjoys watching isekai, so I watch it with him because I'm like, like he doesn't watch other anime and he gets like really
Hmm.
big enjoyment out of isekai, so I'm like, oh, that's cute. All right, we'll watch it together, right? And it's like a puppy. It's like a puppy. And we watch this, and like it's just baffling because absolutely no one can challenge this guy. There's never any threat. Anytime someone challenges him, like his like weakest soldier is stronger than them by magnitude, and they can't touch him. Like nothing can hurt him. When he loses a power, he just gets it back for no reason. Like he lost one of his main powers recently in the show, and then the next episode they were like, "Oh, we made a backup, so actually we have it still." And it's
Ah.
just like absolutely baffling how not a threat anyone is to this guy. I can't believe it. It's like
You see,
dumbfounding how bad the progression is.
you can do that well. For example, Overlord works because it is founded on that premise.
Yeah, but it's not
It is
Overlord, you know?
it's not Overlord. Yeah, like oh, I like the joke of Overlord is that he is never in any danger. He
Right.
is the final unpatched bugged out boss with the infinite monopool.
Hmm.
Incidentally, the infinite monopool is also like the main MacGuffin in the Death Attribute Magician manga, which
Hmm.
was originally a light novel, which is also about an overpowered MC in an isekai. And it also works because it is well written and totally I am totally not biased because of the well-built women with the sexy abs in it. Completely unrelated. Speaking, like isekai is a format. It's a fine format. You can work with it
Oh,
well.
totally. Yeah.
Yeah. For example, because it got so played out at one point, because like every anime was an isekai, the subversive isekais had their place, and a lot of them work very well. Like Konosuba is a subversive isekai.
Hmm.
Like the Grey Grimoire is. a very subversive isekai, and that's why
Shield
they're kind of
Hero
cool.
attempted to be, and then again, it became a normal isekai after one season.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like it works as long as it's in its niche. And there's an isekai manga that I'm currently reading, which is, I don't know if I could say it's subversive, but it's definitely novel. It's called Karate Baka Isekai, and it's like it starts with a dude like he's so autistically bought into his karate, which is just unambiguously Kyokushin. He tries to stop an isekai truck by punching it into the engine block.
That's so cool.
It, and naturally, he just dies of it because he's hit by a fucking 3-ton car.
He could have
Uh,
won.
he could have listen. He could have won if he knew that the engine block in those trucks is underneath the driver's seat, not in front of it. Um, it's not. It's not directly said in the manga, but like you can sort of put those two together because he is legitimately actually so ridiculously fucking strong that he tells the reincarnation goddess to fuck right off with that pussy shit with the powers she's offering to him, and he just reincarnates into this fucking world and proceeds to kill a 20-foot tall minotaur by punching it real hard.
Yeah.
Like the overwhelming power of his autism is real. Like to I know mild spoilers for the series, but like you end the first book by him armbarring a dragon. He is he gives absolutely zero fucks.
Yeah, I
Like
will
I have
karate no matter what.
exactly. I have come here to chew bubble gum and karate everything to death, and I am fresh out of bubble gum, is the attitude that he has.
Yeah, slime is not that. Slime is like I don't even know. I don't know. Like they treat it like the best way I can describe Slime's writing is it feels like when you're I don't know if you ever did this, but if you ever wrote like fan fiction in middle school
Hmm.
where
Hmm.
everything always goes well for you no matter what, even when it looks like it doesn't, and you just keep getting more allies and just everything goes great and you always win because you're the best.
Yeah, it's called a Mary Sue.
Yeah, exactly. But it's just like the most distilled format of that to the point where I can't believe what I'm watching. And that's not the goal. Like the goal of the show is not to be like, look how
Yeah.
overpowered he is. That's so funny. Haha. It's just like, no, they play it serious.
Yeah, like a lot of shows are like Gary Stewish in their nature, and it depends on how you write the characters and how you validate and justify his power level. Like Goblin Slayer is very much a Gary Stew. I don't know how much who would qualify as a self-insert, but he's definitely a Gary Stew.
Against
But
goblins.
at this like not only goblins, but he is intentionally written that way, and the
Yeah.
writing is internally consistent to build him up as this man who does just the one thing superbly well, and that is the appeal of the show. And there is a reason why he is both motivated and why he is equipped to do that, as opposed to something like, I don't know, a modern Star Wars character who is overpowered for no reason,
Mm.
except for the fact that, Kathleen Kennedy wants her to be.
Yeah, I'm a big Star Wars fan, you know. I've seen pretty much every single Star Wars property. And yeah.
What kind of Star Wars fan are you?
um like do you mean like what are my favorites?
Well, okay, you don't get the meme. God damn it! You know the Civil War movie that aired recently and was
Oh
just
yeah,
like,
I did watch it. It
okay,
kind of wasn't good.
yeah. Yeah, well, people have different takes about it. They say it was just like okay, like it did a thing. Like the worst thing about that is pretending that journalists are real people and that Kirsten Dunst can act. Um, but I digress. The point of that I was making reference to the
Yeah,
okay, what
yeah.
kind of American are you? So
Right,
in
I
that
remember
sense,
this.
like yeah, have you not seen the memes that I've posted obnoxiously frequently with my model in that
No.
meme?
No,
You
I
have
haven't.
not.
I want to though. That's good.
You have not been doing your reps. God
That's
damn it.
so good.
Alpin is a tourist.
No, wait, you
I'll
don't come
send
up on my Twitter. Hold on, that's no fair. Is it
Listen,
Twitter?
I've been posting I have been posting them on Twitter, but I've also been posting them on places that are not Twitter. Let me
Huh.
send you an
Yeah,
example.
I don't think I've seen him. The only one I ever
Um
see is the Chad face. I love that one.
Yeah, that one was drawn by Olga Okami for me, but no, the memes I've made myself.
Oh,
They're
nice. Okay.
yeah, but that's why I was asking what kind of Star Wars fan are you?
Yes. Yes. Well, I don't know what the two answers would be in this scenario, or the many answers would be in this scenario. Um,
I think the only acceptable answer is I am an expanded universe Star Wars fan.
okay, that's the thing. Yeah. So yes, but I'm a fan of every single Star Wars thing that isn't the sequel trilogy. That's the correct. That's basically my answer. So
Mm,
I like the prequels a lot. I like the original series a
yeah,
lot. I like the EU a lot. I like a lot of the shows, the new shows a lot. Like I like Clone
the
Wars, the
new
animated
shows.
series. Yes, I like the new shows.
That's no longer the new shows, Alpin. Those shows are 15 years old. I'm sorry, those are no longer new.
No, no, no. I mean the new shows too. In addition, both Clone Wars, yes, but I'm talking new as in like Mando and what's it called? Oh, what was it called? The the Rogue One prequel one that everybody likes. I'm
The
forgetting the
the
name of it.
French guy who everyone likes is a bit of a stretch, okay?
No, it's the one that everyone says is like actually really good and they all agree.
And Ando
Andor,
like
Andor.
Andor, yeah, the
Yep.
generic sci-fi sounding name, yeah.
Yeah, like early Mando seasons, Andor. I watch them all. I've watched Ahsoka. I watched Obi-Wan. I'm
Okay,
watching
okay.
Acolyte.
Those are
But sequels suck. The trilogies suck.
yeah. Well, listen, it never had any shot.
Yeah,
Mando, I think, made sense up to the end of season 2, and that's about where
yep,
it kind
agree.
of played out. Like up to the point where they made Kathleen Kennedy angry by having a favorable appearance of Luke Skywalker, and after that point, they just murdered the show. That's it. That's where you get your fucking Lizzo cameos and whatnot, and other immersion-breaking things.
It seems like sometimes you can get by and make good Star Wars content if you don't get recognized by Disney. Like if you don't do so
Exactly.
well that Disney doesn't like put the Eye of Sauron on you, you can make a good show.
Listen, don't call it Disney. Like in the case of Star Wars, there is a known named culprit. There
There
is
is an
there is a
individual,
no
yes.
there is a known villain. I'm sorry, but it is one of the franchises that has been ruined by a CEO who has failed upwards. The other one
Yes.
being Halo, by the way.
Oh, I didn't know Halo. No, yeah. Kathleen doesn't seem like a good pick to continue running Star Wars, and really ever never has been.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sorry, but someone who shit cans the expanded universe, which
And then
is,
steals everything from it.
it's only 4,000 years of documented history before and after the movies, but yeah, you definitely don't have any source material to draw from.
No, no, not at
Uh,
all. And it's funny
yeah,
too because they have taken a lot from the EU. They take
yeah.
things all the time. Like, I mean, geez, in the most recent episode of Acolyte, I think Cordite showed up, which
Oh,
was like the
Christ.
lightsaber disrupting metal. And
Yeah,
it's like, yeah, that's from the
the
EU.
mineral. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's from the EU. They were, I think there were rumors of a Mara Jade show as well. I don't know if the Acolyte
sure.
ending ended up being that, but yeah, like there are a lot of bad staffing choices, and I still blame Kathleen Kennedy for all of them happening. Listen, it's a pattern. It's like even Halo. Like, what would you say was the first bad Halo game?
Ooh, I'd probably say four.
That's correct. That is the correct answer. You know what changed in 4?
That was, yeah, I do.
There you go.
But Kuramaru, I don't want to look it in the eye. I don't want to look it in the eye,
No.
Kuramaru.
No, no, no. Maintain eye contact the entire time. Establish. Listen, you have to. I'm not going to force you to say it with me, but everyone knows that Bonnie Ross is the one to blame.
If I look
Like
it
you
in the
don't
eye, I don't want to. I
listen.
don't know. I don't like think I'll
Listen.
like what I see.
It's very simple. If you are the CEO at the time when your studio goes from actually making games to essentially delegating everything to a development sweatshop in St. Petersburg, you done fucked up.
Yeah.
Which is by the way exactly what happened with at the very least Halo Infinite as far as we know. Do you know what was the sort of debacle with the Halo Infinite specifically?
In regards to like the release, like not having all the promised content on release type stuff, or in regards to the background.
In regards to development being severely disrupted and delayed in
Hmm.
early 2022.
Yeah, was there an outsourcing problem?
So, the bulk of the work on the engine and development, including map design, and feature design was done by an outstaffing company called Spirasoft.
Okay.
They're a fairly well-known outstaffing agency. Well, not an agency. They're an outstaffing studio. They did a lot of work for Ubisoft. Specifically, they developed the wildlife ecosystem and meta for Assassin's Creed Origins, if I'm not mistaken. Like
Uh-huh.
they do work for a lot of reputable projects, but they've done the bulk of development work for 343 Industries, specifically for Halo Infinite. And when something happened in the beginning of 2022, and them being a Russian company, Microsoft could no longer have any kind of dealings or contacts with them.
Ah.
So 343 essentially lost all of the keys to the source code and to the engine of Halo Infinite. They were just left with a product they don't understand or know how to operate because they just didn't have that expertise in house anymore. Which
Mhm.
was, I think, one of the big reasons why Bonnie Ross was allowed to fail upwards back into Microsoft.
Yeah, it's a crazy thing. You see it a lot with actually you see it a lot in game dev in general where
Mm.
they because game dev and this might not be specifically their problem, but because game dev has been such a like weird like overwork position recently where they like you know don't have like set hours and they sometimes crunch a lot and stuff. They never retain talent long term, so they're constantly in a cycle of teaching new people who don't know anything, and so you end up with teams full of people who where there are no veterans, and they've never learned anything.
Those are kind of different problems. I think it has to do with the fact that studios in the West like to genuflect, and then they're faced with a need for someone to actually sit down and do the work. But the 700 different HR personnel that they've hired can't really do real work. They can only collect salaries and I don't know, prepare pointless presentations, I guess.
Yeah, HR kind of bloated.
Yeah, they have to outstaff the actual work to other studios to perform, which was what this was Spirasoft's niche essentially.
Yeah.
And that's why the staff photo of 343 now looks very different from the staff photo of Bungie when they were making Halo 3.
Yeah. Hey, I gotta go soon. If we can wrap up soon. I gotta
Mm,
sleep.
that's understandable. Thank you for making time regardless, and dropping by. You have any big projects you'd like to shout out?
Yeah, I keep telling this to everyone because I want to commit to it. Like I'm kind of like forcing
Sure.
myself by saying it. But for my birthday coming up in October, it's still a long way away.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm trying to produce a full independent 3D live, like a HoloLive style 3D live concert,
Ah,
with like an 8 song set list and stuff like that. I've already started working recording on that and stuff. So I'm trying to have that
nice.
be my like my October Idol debut. So that's gonna be the
Well,
debut of the Ojisan Idol.
there you go. Mark it down in your calendars. We're gonna hold your feet to the fire for that
Yeah,
one.
make me do it.
Exactly. I'll make sure to include all the relevant links. And yeah, so look out for the October Oji-san Idol debut, I guess.
Hell yeah, and thanks for having me, Kuramaru. It's been
Alpin,
fun doing a
yeah,
podcast.
pleasure to have you here, man.